Welcome everybody to Ben's Brick Designs. I'm Ben. Thank you for being here today. Today we're going to do a little bit different, something other than me looking at software and building Lego and taking Lego apart. But as always, we will keep it Lego related because tonight I have a special guest with me, a friend of mine, Lugmates, and a season 5 contestant on Lego Masters. Please welcome Justin Brady-Joyner. Justin, thank you for being here
Hi.
tonight.
Of
How are
course.
you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I appreciate you taking time to be on here. I know you got a busy jet-setting lifestyle now that you are a super famous Lego Master contestant.
Sure.
Um, I know I feel like we can talk about Lego Masters a little bit as we go along, but I think I wanted to, because I know you in real life and I know you
Mhm.
personally, and over the past year or so, you and your husband and me and my wife have kind of hung out a little bit and got to know each other. So I wanted to take this time for people to also get to know you
Cool.
as a person and a Lego builder,
Yeah.
other than just the person who's the contestant on the show.
Sure.
Um, so for all those who are waiting to get some dirt on Lego Masters, we may not get a whole lot of it, but and for those who were just on Johnny Build stream watching uh, the Pittsburgh Pals, the interview with him. I appreciate you coming over here and hanging out with us, as
Yeah.
always. I was sad to see them go.
Mhm.
There were some of my favorites. I had met one or both of them, I think, at a brick rodeo at some point.
Marcella
Um,
was there last summer.
that's right. Yeah. So I would have been her. And then I honestly, you meet so many people. I hate to say I don't remember, but in watching some of her YouTube videos after the fact, I'm like, oh yeah, I think I remember hanging out with her a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we'll get to Lego Masters in a little bit.
Cool.
Well, let's start where most of us start, which is our Lego journey from the beginning. So when you started doing uh, builds and your own models and things, were you a Lego kid, or did you start as a kid and grow into an adult, or how did that work for you?
Yeah. So I grew up in the 80s and 90s and had a lot of fun sets that I remember fondly, where I mostly remember building from instructions. I don't remember doing too much mocking at the time, but the sets that always come to mind as like nostalgic were the Islander sets. So those were the offshoots of the pirates, and then the I want to say it was Space Police. It was the red and black
Oh, for
with the
sure.
neon. Yeah, yeah. So those stick out in my mind as, and the Blacktron. I think it was the Blacktron. There was like one ship in particular that had like octagonal. That's the word.
Hmm.
Octagonal windows. There were three of them, and it could be built in multiple ways. But those were super nostalgic for me. Those are like throwback sets. I actually found at. Is it nearby? It's not. I found at a Half Price Books one of the robots from Space Police that I was like, oh my gosh. So I grabbed it. I haven't actually, if I can find it, maybe I'll build it tonight. And let me see. But yes, so I was a kid. Yes. Oh, sweet. Okay. Oh, not Space Police. This one was, it's the blue and orange. I'll build this
Oh,
tonight. What would that be?
that's
Remember?
there were like 4 of those,
Yeah.
and I forget what they were called. Somebody in the chat help us out. But I
Set
had
number
each of those.
2151.
Yeah, it
Oh my
was.
gosh, fun.
Yeah, there was a handful of like the robots that came around the same time as Space Police, kind of near
Hmm.
Spirius and Explorians and things like that.
Yeah.
Robo Force, maybe something like Robo Force.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm
Um,
trying to see if
those
these are
were great
something.
because they were these giant, almost immovable robots on wheels, and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of it. And occasionally they would have clippy things, and and you could stick them in the minifigs in as pilots and whatnot. So that's a really cool find. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a little tile in here that says Robo. So I'm guessing this is Robo Force.
Yeah,
Um,
and some of them, I
yeah.
think Johnny's right, Spirius maybe, or Spirus. Some
Mm-hmm.
of them kind of bled into other, themes, so it's very likely one was in one of those, but I think there was like a Robo Force or something at the time too.
We'll also see if
Um,
this has all the pieces.
yeah, for sure. If you got
But,
it at, Half Price Books, it was probably resold by somebody.
Mhm. Um,
So those are the ones you remember as a kid, right?
yeah,
That
yeah.
was kind of your age, is like late '80s, early '90s Lego?
Mhm. And I remember the other sets that I remember, were the ones that had the dragons, which I think were Magisto, but I can't remember. I just know that I had a Magisto, which might have been in those same sets or not, and then I had a bunch of the sets that had the dragons. There was one that had a catapult, that I remember
Okay.
building too, so some kind of castle, but I don't remember the exact faction or whatnot.
Yeah. And the theme that you just said, that doesn't sound familiar to me at all. I'd have to go research that. That's kinda cool.
Hmm,
I like hearing
okay.
about stuff where it's like, "Do you remember this line from the late '90s or something?" It's like, "No, I haven't." Like,
No.
Galador was such a huge thing for
Oh,
people.
yeah.
I had
Mhm.
no idea what it was.
None
And I think
whatsoever,
that
yeah.
was during, my, dark age,
Dark
which
Ages.
yeah, that's the next thing I was gonna ask, is if you had a dark age and kind of what you may have missed out, um, or did
Yeah.
you kind of seamlessly just go from, like, kid Lego, adult Lego?
Hmm. I definitely took some time away and excuse me, we just ate dinner and now I feel like I'm all phlegmy.
Okay, I've got a
Fun,
cold, so
fun.
maybe the 2 of us, it's gonna be a wonderful
Sweet,
evening of
right?
television.
Yeah, yeah. I remember uh probably high school time, maybe middle school. That's when I got really involved in musical theater. And so that took up a lot of my time. I was always a music geek and that became a theater geek as well. And that just was like it took away all my time, and I remember the Lego sets and everything being kind of given to my younger brother. He's 10 years younger, and
Mhm.
so I know he built with them for a while, and then they magically disappeared, and that makes me so sad. I don't know where they went. No one in my family seems to know where they went, so
Oh, no.
yeah. But I came out of my dark ages actually when I moved to Austin. It was November 2009. I didn't really know anybody. My roommate at the time, who was a friend of mine from grad school, she left for the month of December for the holidays. And so I was alone and like had lived here for 2 weeks and went to Barton Creek Mall looking for like holiday gifts for people and saw the Lego store and was like, wait, there's a store? Like that doesn't, I didn't even know that there was a store that only sold Lego.
Right.
Um, and so I got sucked in by like the holiday, like Winter Village stuff. And
Mhm.
I want to say I bought an Advent that year, and then I bought the Winter Village the next year. It was the bakery, which I think I looked it up and I thought it was 2009, but it must have been 2010. Um, so that first year, I think I got an Advent, but the idea was like, oh, this is just decorations for home and it'll be fun. And then, exactly.
Yeah, and I've
Fast forward
I've
to now.
seen I've seen that since, and it's kind of
Hmm.
spiraled out of control a little bit for you.
A little bit. So.
So you really didn't have sort of what everybody else has, kind of a dark age, you just kind of carried through a little bit?
Hmm. I feel like it was a break for, I don't know, 10, 15 years before
Oh, okay, so
I
it
can
was
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
pretty good.
So, yeah, I just like, around high school time, I just got so involved with theater that I just kinda set it aside, and it wasn't something I really thought about doing. I feel like when I first started buying the Winter Village sets, it was more like decoration for home and those types of things. I didn't see it as a hobby.
Yeah,
Um, and I've always done art in all different facets, but for probably 5 to 7 years, I was doing paper crafting in Austin. I was working at the Paper Source, which is a really cool paper shop,
yeah,
teaching crafting classes and all kinds of things. And I feel like that was when I started to play around with bricks too and was like, "Oh, this is an art medium." Like,
mhm,
to me, I see myself now as a Lego artist, and I was a paper artist, and it's just kind of transitioned from one hobby to the other.
yeah.
Although we have a million supplies for paper crafting that are taking up space because I don't spend as much time doing it anymore. So
Yeah, do you still work on that a little bit, or is it just something it just kind of, like you said, takes up
sometimes.
space?
Yeah, it mostly takes up space. I got in the habit of making holiday cards every year, and it was just a fun hobby. And that was in addition to like on the other side of this room, I'm looking at it that I've got like paper flowers and three-dimensional paper art all over the walls. That kind of stuff has been set aside mostly, but we still, Philip now, my husband, we do our holiday cards. We still hand make them and it's just kind of a fun added piece. So, like, honestly, once a year we pull out all the crafting stuff just for that one project. But otherwise, it mostly just takes up space. So, and
For
too much
the
space.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Justin's actually we're from relatively similar spaces in Colorado, and
Hmm.
we have very parallel, life
Very,
tracks,
yeah.
musical theater, art, all this kind of stuff. The fact that you make holiday cards, I don't know that you know this, but I make holiday cards.
What?
And
No.
I've stopped the last couple of years because it's just like I have to get the stuff out from the hidey hole where all the art stuff is. I'm like, it's such a process to do
It
all this stuff.
is.
So I think
Mhm.
we'll have to challenge each other this year to like
Oh my
actually
gosh.
start early, get on that. My mom will be very happy about it because
I
she's like,
love
"Are you
that.
doing the card this year?"
Ben, I
Um,
had no idea. That is it's
yeah,
so
I'll have
funny,
to
like, peeling back the layers, there's constant
exactly,
overlaps.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to send you some of the ones that I've done. They're
Yeah,
kind
I
of
wanna
funny.
see. That's fun.
So you're talking about going to the Lego store and realizing that, oh my, there's a Lego store here.
Yeah.
Did you, once you found that out, did you immediately want to be like part of a larger Lego community, or was that
Mm.
a later discovery for
It was later. So, moved in 2009, 2010, basically. It was November, so right before. And was buying sets, just pop culture related sets, movie sets that I enjoyed here and there, and mostly just like holiday themed ones to decorate with.
you?
Yes, now I wanna combine paper and Lego, I love that.
Mhm.
Um, so, was, mostly just kinda collecting those things. At some point, Philip and I, decided to make minifigs that looked like us and thought it was kind of fun and cute.
Mhm.
And we had those that we would take, to different places, and then at our wedding, so 2015, actually, no, let me rewind a little bit. When the Lego movie came out, um, we went and I loved the movie. I thought it was so much fun. And Philip went to the Lego store and found Emmett and Lucy, or Wild Style, the
Mhm.
minifigs and the blind bags. And that's what became the obsession then with collecting minifigures. So the Lego movie really got me hooked on that piece. And then I think it was from there that we started to buy more like movie related sets and things.
Right.
So eventually we ended up making sig figs. We had them on our wedding cake, and we took them with us on our honeymoon. And took pictures of them on the honeymoon, and people loved it. And we were like, "Oh, this is actually really fun." And it was also really an interesting way to meet people because we would be like posing the minifigures, and people would walk by and be like, "Wait, are you taking pictures of Lego?" And so that became just a fun hobby of ours of like, "Oh, let's add Lego photography in." And then after a couple vacations, our friends were like, "Can we just get pictures of you?" So, because we were both sharing that on like our independent Instagrams and Facebooks. And so
Right.
2017, we made a joint Lego account, which is Brady-Joyner bricks. It eventually kind of became my account predominantly, mostly because Philip just lost access on his phone. But I think it was that same year that I met Will Heron at Brickfest Live.
It always
He
starts with
was
Will, doesn't
It
it?
always starts with Will.
Yeah.
Everything, all roads point back to Will.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to Brickfest Live. It was the first time we'd ever heard of any type of Lego event.
Mm.
And
Oh, it's a
while we
shame it
were
had to be
there,
Brickfest Live too.
I know, right? And Brick Fiesta, which is now Rodeo,
Yeah.
as you know, that already existed. So we just missed it, apparently. But yeah, we met Will. So it was 2017. We started the account, and then he had told me about TextLug, and it was like February 2018 that I think I came to my first meeting. Um, but it was really creating that Instagram account that I was like, oh my gosh, there are all
Yeah.
kinds of other people who do this. Like, I thought it was just me and him, and we'd only found one other minifig photographer through Instagram at the time. And I think
Yeah.
it's just because we weren't looking for AFOL as a hashtag. Like we didn't know
Yeah.
any of the
You didn't know
words
that
or
term
whatever.
or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. So I was like, wow, there's like a whole giant world of people that
And
that do this.
speaking of like peeling back layers, that's one of those things once you get into the community, you're like, I didn't know people did this. They make
Hmm.
clothes, they do photography, they do all these like
Right?
the motion and lights and that kind of stuff, the
Yeah, yeah.
sculptures, the people who do it for a living as a sculpture artist kind of thing. That's
Hmm.
the things you start finding out. It's kind of crazy.
It's like some people have this as a job. Like that is so
Right.
incredible. Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of jobs, you
Yeah.
are a registered or registered, recognized
Hmm.
Lego
Hmm.
fan media.
Hmm.
Your Brady-Joyner bricks account is
Hmm.
a RFLM,
Yep.
RLFM,
Or LFM, yes. Hmm.
um, and you're able to select sets for review to talk about on your account.
Hmm.
I'm not going to go too far into that, but
Sure.
um, before those days, or if you suddenly stopped doing that and had to go back to be more selective about it,
Yeah, yeah.
what kind of sets now would you focus on? What kind of, because everybody's got
Ooh,
limited
yeah,
budgets and limited
totally.
space. So like what kind
Yeah.
of genres or themes or types of builds would you get now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I have gravitated more in the last handful of years to sculpting and larger types of characters and things. And so I would probably want some of the sculpted builds. I'm looking across the room and I see I've got the Spider-Man mosaic that's like sculpted and sticks out from the wall.
Hmm.
And then I got to build the 101 Dalmatians and just was
Oh, nice.
enamored with how beautiful that sculpt is. So I
Yeah.
think I would probably be drawn towards things that are pop culture related and things that are art and sculpture. I if have found that I move further away from minifig scale things. Just it's not as exciting
Right.
to me to build.
Yeah.
Like I enjoy building the minifigure sets, but when I think of mocking, I rarely think of it in minifig scale anymore. So
Which is interesting because I know you really like minifigs in general.
yeah,
Just
that's
kind of the scale and the type of build that they are associated with just
right.
isn't. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, we've got I have a shelf over here on my left that my father-in-law made me that's perfect for holding minifigures and I collect the CMF lines and we have each row as soon as a new one comes out I'll move them all down one row and retire the bottom row to another sorting
Yeah.
area.
The Hall of
Um
Fame of minifigs, they get shuffled off to the.
Right.
Yeah.
And we do have like we do a lot of like mini builds and things. Like I'll do the minifigure habitats and stuff. So I guess I still do some of that. It's just when I think of a mock that I'm gonna spend a lot of time on,
Mhm.
that's not just a one evening type project. I
Right.
usually want to do more of the larger sculpted characters and things. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I know when your first some of your I think we'll touch on it a little bit later, but I remember some
Mm.
of your first, mocks that you would bring to the bug
Mm.
meetings were the little, not habitats, but
Mhm.
quasi-habitats are about that size of, like, your
Yeah.
favorite movies, and
Yes.
how you would source the minifigs and get the parts, and it's just these stacks and rows of all, and you brought them to one of the brick rodeos, and it was just a hit. It was absolutely great.
It was so fun to I'm glad you remember that. It was like a core memory of mine was that first meeting, for sure. Going in and I was nervous. I didn't know who any of these people were. I had met Will and that was it. So I was kind of showing up like, we'll see what happens. And the builds that I had brought were specific to the Oscars that year because the
Yep.
Academy Awards were, I think, the very next day. And so Philip and I had been working on doing one small build for each one. And when I say small, I mean a 6 by 12 base plate with 5 bricks tall. So very,
Yeah.
very small. And that's
Yeah.
because it fits in this shadow box we have that is meant for shot glasses, but you turn it sideways and it fits that size perfectly. So that
Right.
was like the reason for the scale. But some of those stories were also queer stories. And so I was like, I'm coming to the space. I'd already been out. I mean, I have a husband. So like clearly
Right.
people know, know that I'm a part
Especially
of
if
the
you
queer
bring them, you're
community.
like, don't pay attention to this guy. Look at my Lego," you know?
Just yeah, ignore this over here. But I still just it's vulnerable to go into those spaces and be like, I don't know how people will
Yeah.
receive me. And everyone was so kind at that meeting and
Yeah.
so appreciative and complimentary about our builds. And I was like, these little things, really?
Mhm.
That's so
Yeah.
fun. So yeah, it was really fun.
Um, so for those who may have an online community now,
Hmm.
a TikTok account or Instagram account or something, and maybe they want to be influencers or YouTube um, vloggers or anything like that, can you offer any advice
Yeah,
to them about what it's like to start up, what it's like to be the head of a group of hundreds or thousands of people,
for sure.
the responsibilities involved in that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say first off, my accounts are relatively small in comparison to a lot of the other ambassadors that are recognized Lego fan media ambassadors. So my story is a little bit different than I think some others. But what I would say is consistent across the board. And this is speaking about RLFM, but I think it's also true for other types of
Yeah.
influencer type content creation things. What Lego was looking for was someone who had a community. So it wasn't just like, these are my friends that I hang out with necessarily, but it's like, is there something a little bit more? And so they really liked the fact that I was connecting with people where I was doing build challenges together and I was hosting some of those things. And my voice and what I think about and the way that I talk about Lego often included elements of diversity and inclusion because that was my full-time work and it's a huge
Mhm.
passion of mine. And so when I build and play, a lot of that comes through in that way too. So I think it doesn't have to be those topics that are important to you, but it's like, what's your niche? What's your thing that people come to you for? Like, are you a
Right.
minifigure expert where people want to know how to customize minifigures, and you know every single detail of where to find the arms and the hands and all the different pieces that you would put together to make something that's like super cool, right?
Yeah.
Or are you, there's lots of other build challenge communities. I wouldn't say that you should run to create one now just to be like, oh, this will be my checkbox. It needs to be something that's just authentic and genuinely you. And so, they're not looking for people, Lego in particular, they're not looking for people who are just simply wanting to review sets. That's It doesn't matter if I'm reviewing a set and 12 other people are reviewing a set and you watch the exact same thing. So don't try to copy others. Think about
Mhm.
what is it that you do differently. So like my reviews of sets, they initially started heavily with the diversity and inclusion focus, and that still is a component. Part of it is dependent on the sets that I get. So like if I get the Van Gogh set, that's not necessarily something I would talk about in that way.
Mhm.
Um, but more so now, as I'm reviewing sets, I'm looking at what have I learned from this set and how can I apply that in mocking. Because to me, building a set is all about, well, a big part of it is about what you learn from it and learning from the experts at Lego who designed this incredible thing. And so that's been my approach is like, if people follow me, I want them to be learning something. I want them to be growing in their empathy for other people. So growing in their skills and creativity, and then growing in their compassion and empathy. So a little rambly, but ultimately, I think they wanted to know that I had an actual community,
Mhm.
and that I had a perspective that was unique and genuine to me.
Right.
So they also, a piece that comes up a lot that I hear criticism around, that I just wanted to address is like some people think that Lego ambassadors are not allowed to share critical feedback.
I was just gonna ask because Johnny
Yeah.
had something in the chat about that. Yeah.
Oh, like, well, yeah. Oh, which is totally fair. So,
Yeah.
the what I would say is, first off, anybody that's going to be an ambassador of any company, period, is probably going to be a big fan. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't really make sense for them to find someone who's not a big fan. So that obviously you're going to have a bias anyway.
Yeah.
That said, they tell us, please be honest, please be clear about whatever you think, if you like it, if you don't like it. I do think that some ambassadors do a better job at balancing that than others. For me, I don't review it in the same way. So I'm not necessarily saying, like, this is why I think you should buy this set.
Mm.
But more, I'm showing, here's some really cool things I learned from this. This is why I enjoyed this process. I will say, like, I disagree with, or like, I didn't like this color choice, or I think that this would be better, or whatever.
Right.
But like,
Yeah.
I'll get people who get upset with me for not complaining about the price. And truthfully, I could complain about the price all day. I think they're too
Yeah.
expensive. That's
You
a
can
truth.
complain about the price for just about every one of
Exactly.
them. That's
Right.
that's low hanging fruit. That's not
Yeah,
why you're
yeah. So it's like that's not my intention, and it's not helpful for me to add my voice to that. And I mean, I have said that in reviews before, but like that's not what I'm looking at for them. So, and I also don't think that's why people follow me to see that in my reviews. Like
For
that,
sure, yeah.
there's
There's
others that do
everybody's got
breakdowns, and
their
yeah,
own voice, like you're saying, and
yeah, yeah,
the way yours is unique adds more to the flavor of the community than if you
yeah,
get 150 people saying, "This is so great. Look at this, and this is why
right,
this is good, and this is why this," Um, I do think that there's, and I won't go off too much on the views of outsiders to the LAN in
sure,
general,
yeah, yeah,
because I feel it's very mixed and can be a
yep,
little toxic.
hmm,
But I think that's because there's such a big face of conformity involved. And I appreciate your take on, I'm not here to do that. I'm here to offer the voice that I have, which is not necessarily something that you're normally going to see
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the world of Lego, the world of creation in general, creativity, that kind of thing.
For sure. Yeah. And I think like I also look at who do I follow from other brands or companies and why do I follow them? So think about who you follow as well and what types of content you enjoy.
Yeah,
And that may also guide you towards like, oh, this is how I want to evolve my content over time or whatnot. I will
yeah,
say, like, I do think my content personally has evolved over time in part as a result of the Lego Ambassador Network for sure. Um, but I don't think it's changed in any dramatic way that feels like people are like you're no longer yourself. Like
mm,
um, I I find myself actually often defending a lot of the other ambassadors because people will say in a backhanded way like, well, you're one of the good ones, and I'm not saying that as a pat on the back. I'm actually saying that as it's kind of annoying when I hear that because I'm
yeah,
like, actually I think they're all good and I think they just
yeah,
reach different people in different ways, and maybe their flavor is not your flavor, and that's okay. Right.
yeah.
So doesn't make them bad, it just makes them not for you, and that's okay. So
There you go.
I know I'm not for everybody. So
Oh, come on, you're vanilla ice cream, you're strawberry sorbet, you know. Um, I will take a break and say that if anybody in the chat would like to ask Justin a question, just please put it
Yeah.
in the chat and we'll highlight it and we'll take a look.
Yes.
Um, a little bit of a pivot, but you had touched on a little bit about your work in equity and inclusion.
Mhm.
Is your focus of study? Is your day job? Is your career choice? I know you've been going through a little bit of transition with that, but you do talk about it as much as we interact. I know it comes up a lot in conversation, and you like to evangelize equity and inclusion in a lot of things in daily life and just kind of in a broad spectrum.
Mhm.
What do you think Lego does best in terms of diversity and inclusion? And what do you think they could improve upon?
Yeah. Love this question. And yeah, so just to fill in everybody too. So my background professionally, my first career was working in higher education. So I worked in universities, but the bulk of the work that I did was leadership development programs for students. And almost all of those programs included diversity and inclusion woven into the way that we taught leadership. So it was inclusive leadership, it was empathetic leadership, it was thinking about and understanding who you are and how your identity also shapes and affects the way you show up. I moved from that into corporate and I worked at a company initially to do learning and development. And within about 6 months or so, my job shifted to building out the diversity, equity, and inclusion function at the company, which was so cool and so rewarding and such a wonderful experience. And it was also a global company. So it taught me a lot about how what I was doing in higher ed was often focused from a US lens. And when you're working in a global environment, it's completely different. And so
Mm,
that added all kinds of layers and nuance and fascinating things to me. So, all that said, I no longer work in that full time work. I now do part time consulting, and the consulting is still in those same topics. And kind of, I look at it as organizational culture and inclusive leadership development. So that's kind of where that sits for me. But where this all connects to your question is Lego is a global company. And so often when people are looking at what Lego does right or does not do right or whatever, truthfully, we're looking at it through the lens that we have often from our own lived experiences. So it's easy for Americans to look at a global group and say, you're not doing this right, or you are doing this right based on my American westernized
mm,
opinions on how things should go.
yeah.
What I found in working at a global company, and it was a global tech company, was it is incredibly challenging to drive diversity, equity, and inclusion work effectively at the speed that everyone is satisfied with. When you have some countries where, as an example, we had one country that the country made it illegal to be LGBTQ, and had a very different environment than the US at the time. And then we have employees in the United States who were living through, at the time, 2020 and Black Lives Matter and everything that was happening that summer. So I was constantly being yelled at of we're not going fast enough and we're going way too fast. We're doing too much. So one of the things I really value about the way that Lego approaches things is I do think that they're thoughtful about the different speed and pace in the global context that they have to operate within. And so I think that they are making efforts to push and move things forward in different areas around the globe. And it's also knowing how hard it is to gather data and information in a global context that is easy to report for people to understand. Like I feel like I got a little off topic, or a little off track, but
No, you've answered the next two
so
of my
I was
questions.
gonna
So
say that's
perfect.
honestly because I had seen the question,
Yeah.
so I knew kind of where you were, or not where you were going. But one of the questions you were going to ask was, I know they recently had their, they announced their. Anyway, we'll come back to that in a second. One of the things I think Lego does well, so that's what you asked. They do reach from a culturally thoughtful way, and better than they used to as well. So I think they've improved in this area, in a culturally competent way, audiences and customers around the globe. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in terms of the way that they're approaching the Asian market right now, and the way that they have in the last handful of years. I think they've been really thoughtful about what is going to resonate with families there. And that also might mean that some sets get pushed more in certain geographies, and that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And I also think that, like, I know from an LGBTQ standpoint, I've been really impressed with the actions the company has taken, and I'll come back to we'll talk in just a second about their report that they had. But like the fact that they still chose to have Pride campaigns this year when a lot of other companies, global or US only, have chosen to be silent, means a lot to me. And more so than that, I've seen them consistently be good about responding to criticism in comments on their social posts. And I think it's improved even more so than it was before. And I say that because every year for the last handful of years, when there's a Pride post, I typically like it and comment in some way about, like, thank you for sharing this. And a lot of people like my comment, and then my comment rises to the top. And this is an Instagram, because I spend a lot of my time there. But with it being the top comment, when haters come in to hate on the post from Lego, they often reply to that comment, and then my DMs get full with all that hate.
Oh man.
And so sometimes it's directed at me, often it's directed at Lego, but they're not realizing that they also tagged me in their response. And I think I've watched Lego do a better job responding and addressing things, which I think is, if you're a company that's going to stick your neck out there and say that you support this, but then you have members of your community who end up being impacted by the negativity that comes from that, then I think that's not responsible. So for them to instead actually respond is great.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
Rambly, but yes, I do think they do some really good things. All that said, too, I think with their products, they do really good things with inclusion of different storylines, so that when kids are playing and even when adults are building, that they can see themselves reflected in the bricks, which is great. And I would say that's true to a point, and that there's always more work to be done there. But especially their focus on disability inclusion over the last handful of years has been really impressive in terms of minifigure stories and mini doll stories. I would love to see some more queer storylines show up in that. And I think that's one that the company would be really challenged to produce, given that they're a global company, and they would get heat from that. So like even the Everyone is Awesome set still gets heat, and it's, as innocuous as it can be, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had their yearly statement, and it wasn't really like a mission statement, but it was more like a financial statement that was missing a lot of the LGBTQ language that it had in previous years. It still had young people and women focus in some of its language, but it was missing some of that. And you kind of touched on that, but do you have any more thoughts on that as well? Or
It was I was disappointed to see it, and I still am disappointed that it wasn't included. I think more so from the lens of if you're wanting to report out on how you've improved on the way that you're treating your employees,
Mhm.
and for your internal stakeholders, your employees to see that you care about this and value this, then I think it's important to share and speak about it. And so seeing that missing was nerve-wracking. It made me wonder if they were not going to have anything related to having a pride comment or something this month or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see that their actions elsewhere have been. I need to see more. Oh, yes, right. So I'm glad to see their actions have been. They still follow through with their commitments to the LGBTQ community. I think in some big ways, but I think that part of that is it makes me wonder about their financial stakeholders and what they care about.
Yeah, that's
And
kind of what we all thought when we read it.
yeah, like, and I think sometimes it's the communications people are thinking about the core audience that something is for, and maybe not fully recognizing the consequence of leaving that out,
Yeah,
or maybe recognizing it and saying, "Hey, this could be something that bites us," and it did, I think.
yeah. And you had
So
mentioned it.
yeah,
They're a global company and they do have other,
yeah,
not just the US, but they do have
mhm,
China, they do have Asian countries, they have a lot of European countries to think about.
yeah,
And our views are not the views of China and they're not the views
yeah,
of Europe. And they're, so it's I don't envy the job of having to curtail that or dress it a
yeah,
certain way. So
totally.
um
One
um
thing I found, just on the reporting piece too, one thing I found when I worked in global in a corporate context too was oftentimes people want companies to report out on everything, but they
mhm,
don't understand what's actually reasonable to or possible to get.
yeah,
So, for example, in some countries, it is illegal to ask certain questions about certain identities because they have laws in that country that prohibit or whatever,
right.
which means some of those countries, we just don't have that data, period.
Yeah,
When it comes to LGBTQ things in particular, you are asking people to out themselves if you are asking them to share anything about their identities. And so
yeah,
you have to make sure you have a very clear, inclusive policy at your company that it really shows in the lived experience for the employees every day for them to feel comfortable sharing that information with you.
yeah,
And it's not fully necessary for you to have that level of detail on every employee for you to still enact positive and inclusive culture for the employees that work there.
right.
Um, so yeah. Anyway, I could ramble on about this a lot, especially because it was my full time work for so long. So,
No, that's
but yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I'm gonna ask, somebody asked if purple is your favorite color. Does it match your complexion? Something else? Are you gonna be purple haired old man?
That's a good question. So purple is my hair is still purple because of Lego Masters, to be perfectly honest.
Oh, it's
Um,
scene continuity.
So it is, yeah. So in 2020, when we all went to work from home, a lot of us went to work from home, I played around with bleaching my hair and I made it pink and it was super fun. And then it was pink and purple and that was a lot of fun. I tried blue and I hated it. It was like Cookie Monster blue and not what I thought. I wanted it to be like navy. And then I just kind of settled on purple because I liked the way that it worked with my skin tone and was just kind of fun. That's what I went with on the show. And it was a little bit more this color when I first arrived at the set. But then the hair and makeup people said, can we add more pink to it and make it more magenta? Because under the lights on in the bill, if it stayed this color, it would look a little bit more gray and wouldn't read as purple. So I was like, sure.
Yeah,
So magenta e purple became like, this is how I'm going to be. We also filmed October 2023, and I assumed that the
that just
show
blows
would
my mind.
air. I know, me too, still. I assumed it would air sooner, and so
Mhm.
I didn't think I'd be stuck with purple hair and my orange glasses. I love them,
I bet you are
but yeah,
dying for the next month and a half to be over so you can be like, "I can dye my hair a different
I
color
can
now."
change it. Yes.
Yeah,
I did red a couple years ago, and it was really fun. And I was like, oh, that'd be fun to do again. But it'll stay purple for a
um,
while. So yeah,
that's fun. I had a question here, but I think you already asked it, and I'm gonna flip
Mm.
over. Again, if you've got a question for
Yeah.
Justin, thank you everybody for being here.
Yay!
If
Hi,
you're
friends.
just joining us, this is Justin Brady-Joyner of Brady-Joyner Bricks, and he's a contestant on Lego Master Season 5. An episode just aired Monday on live, Tuesday on Hulu for those of us who don't have an antenna and have to wait till the next day to watch.
Mhm.
It was so funny because I was like, "Oh, we'll watch it Monday night. We're both sick and we can't go to the viewing thing." So, and Beth's like, "But we don't have
But
cable." And I'm like,
how?
"We don't need cable. We have an antenna." She's like, "Where?" I'm like, "That big square hanging on the wall. That's an antenna."
We have one
So,
of those too out there. That's
yeah, it's
funny.
a $20 antenna.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
you spoke earlier of identities, and I hope I'm
Yeah.
reading this question right because you rewrote it for me. Speaking of identities, how does your identity as a part of the LGBTQ plus community show up in your builds or in your role as a fan media?
Yeah. Thanks for asking the question I just wrote for you.
See,
So I personally firmly believe in the concept of representation matters. And I think when people see examples of how they identify in different spaces, it makes them feel comfortable. It makes them feel like maybe that could be me someday, those types of things. So it's not to say that you need to have check boxes of every different type of person in every type of show or anything like that, but rather just thinking about how are we providing space for people to feel seen and feel recognized and supported. So for me, I am open about my queer identity. I mean, I have a husband, he builds with me a lot, which is great. And I find that actually that results sometimes in I'll get like a spike in followers from some review of a set or something that people really liked, and then all of a sudden they'll find out I have a husband, or they'll find out that, which honestly, y'all, how did you not know that I was queer? Like, let's
right?
just be real. First off, if you
It's the
watched me review
movie,
something,
yeah, the
look at
movie
me.
trope of everybody going, "Yeah, we already knew."
Exactly, totally. And so I will see like dips and followers often anytime I post anything that's pride related,
Mm,
which I'm like, okay, whatever, that's fine. Honestly, I want my community to be full of people who are supportive and kind and loving. So if that's not you, bye.
yeah.
But to me, I grew up in an environment that really tried to shield me and protect me and hide me from the queer community. I think my parents were very afraid that I would be who I am. And so I was very involved in musical theater, and that exposed me to a lot of LGBTQ people. And my parents would tell me at a young age, like, avoid being in like alone with these specific people and whatever, because they were so afraid of it. And
Mm,
really what that did is it robbed me of the opportunity of having some really great role models and people in my
yeah.
life that I could look up to. And so now I look at where we are as a country, and I think if I can be visible and out there for other people, maybe there's some kid who sees something in me that makes them feel connected and whatever, and that's great. That feels wonderful. I've had friends who have kids that they think might be a part of the community or might just not, be totally agree with the okay
Mhm,
bye, right? And it's taken me a while to get used to that and comfortable with that too. But yeah, like I've had friends who've reached out to me about like their kids coming out to them or sharing with them about like how important it was for them to know that their parent had a friend who identifies as a part of this community and that kind of thing. And
mhm,
um, I think there's a lot of power and value in that. And I think for me too, I don't want to only surround myself with people that are just like me. My
mhm.
hope is to connect with people that have all different backgrounds, because I think that also helps us all experience the world in a really cool and richer way.
Yeah. As long
So
as
if I
it's
can,
positive, like,
yeah,
the whole, argument with, presidents and leaders of companies and stuff surrounding them with, themselves with people who disagree with them.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you get a
right,
broader spectrum of, like, ideas
totally,
and stuff, as long as it's constructive and it's not harmful.
yes.
I think that's a great way to have a more well-rounded, view of the world, and, like you said, you'd be missing out on relationships and opportunities, and, if you kind of are closed off by that. But by
Yep.
nature too, you don't wanna open yourself up to being harmed in any way, so
Yeah. There is a definitely an element of vulnerability that comes from choosing to be open and out, and um, choosing to go on a show like Lego Masters is
right.
a choice if you're not comfortable with that level of vulnerability. So thankfully, and first off, I'm not reading Reddit. I'm choosing to avoid any space that's going to
I'm
be
reading it
talking
for
about
you,
it.
it's all fine.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Philip is too, which is great, and he's like
Yeah,
giving me the high level highlights, which is nice.
yeah.
I've only had one super hateful person come at me, and it was
Mhm.
like someone else posted something pride related. I commented on it saying like, "Yay, happy pride." And then that person came at me in their comments and I was like, "Who are you, random
Yeah.
stranger?" But that was thankfully, knock on this is fake wood, but whatever. Thankfully that's been the only big hate that came from this so far. But I also have my own lived experiences with that I feel strong enough mentally and emotionally to be able to navigate it if I need to. It's just I've been glad to see that it hasn't. And actually this week, well, so in two of the episodes now, they've talked about my LGBTQ identity and they've talked about my husband. So in one
Mhm.
episode, they showed a picture of our wedding cake and me and him together at our wedding. And then in another episode, they showed a picture of him proposing to me,
Yeah, just
which
this
was,
last one. Beth was like,
yeah.
"I didn't know that. Did you know that?" I was like, "I think you said something at one point."
It was like I was over the moon excited that they shared those things because I was hoping they would, just because they're
Yeah.
fun stories and whatnot. But that is more vulnerability and visibility there. And then GLAAD, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, they are all about LGBTQ support. And visibility in the media, and they've
Mhm.
really pushed for that. They did an article on us, on John and I this week, which was like mind-blowingly cool. It was my number one hope with being on the show was that I would get an opportunity to speak to this, to queer visibility and the importance of it, and specifically with GLAAD. So that was like a
That's
peak
huge.
moment.
Yeah.
But it did make me a little bit nervous, truthfully, at the beginning of this week to be like, okay, this is now out there in a bigger way.
Yeah. And I
So
think that's a big stand by both Lego and Fox to
yes,
do
right.
that. We're
Yeah.
gonna show these people over here who have wedding photos. We're also gonna show
Yep.
these people over here who have wedding photos.
Yep.
Oh, look at that. They're both just wedding photos, you know?
Exactly.
I'm
Yes.
really happy that they're doing that because it's
Yes. Same.
shouldn't be shocking. It's just
Yeah.
wedding photos or proposal photos or beach
Right.
photos or whatever they've got. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, that's
Totally.
huge. So, yeah, and Philip is an AFOL, right?
Yes, he
Is he
is.
an
Yes.
official AFOL or is he a coattail AFOL?
He is an official AFOL. So,
Okay,
and I would say I'm so excited for Brick Rodeo this year because he and I are working on a build together. That's our
nice.
first big build that we've done together. So we've done a lot of small scenes and things together, but this will be the first time that it's like a
And he's
larger.
done some of his own stuff too
He
that he's brought
has.
to meetings, and it's been very good.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm super proud of him. I'm so excited for us to display together. And last summer, I think it was at Brick Rodeo that I was displaying like 12 different things. I always have a hard time narrowing it down.
Mhm.
And we were going to Brick Fair, Virginia right after that, and then to Brick Slopes, Utah. And he came home from rodeo and said, I think I want to display some of my builds in Virginia. And I was like, yes, I want you to. And then he cranked out these incredible mosaics of like 3D character mosaics, one every night for different movies. And I was just like, "You're so good! I love that you're sharing this." So,
And he
um,
came into the hobby late, right? He came in
a
as
little
a
bit,
kind of
yeah.
an adult, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So he did build a little bit as a kid, and we actually got like a shoebox of his old Lego from his parents, and
A
they are the
shoebox,
most.
how adorable.
Right, I know, like the tiniest little bit. And they are the most disgusting, like worst cared for bricks ever.
Do they have a Band-Aid
Um,
in there somewhere?
yeah, probably. And so I don't know where they are. I remember when we first got it from them, I built him a little mini Oscar out of it, like Oscar award.
Mhm.
And we still have that built somewhere. We might have thrown out the rest because they were so gross.
Oh,
But then
nice.
we eventually got the instructions for Nathan Sawaya's actual Oscar, and
Yeah,
so we have that one too, which is amazing.
that's
Um,
that's very
but
cool.
yeah, so he had those as a kid. As an adult, he really got back into it because of me. Um, and it was like he would build the Winter Village sets with me, and that was fun. And then like I'm sure it was Jurassic sets that got him a little bit more into it. I think that's probably when he started to build more with me. The first big sets that we got that like we did together, I bought him the Palace Cinema Theater in 2017 because we had just gone to LA,
Mhm.
and we went to the Grauman Chinese Theater or whatever it's called now. I don't know the actual name anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but I bought that for him for our anniversary. And then I want to say the next year I bought him the T-Rex breakout, the huge T-Rex and the Jurassic Park gates.
Yeah.
And so those have been, I think the movie specific sets were the ones that really hooked him back in. Back to the
Nice.
Future, yeah. So
Does he have like you have your the art stuff and the paper craft and some
mm,
musical stuff? Did he have anything that he left behind to become a Lego hobby person,
mm,
or was this kind of like his thing, his
yeah, yeah,
new, like Beth has no hobbies because
yeah,
she's a social worker
yeah.
and has to come home and do nothing because her whole day is other people.
Just yeah,
So her
totally.
hobby is sleeping. Um, did he have anything that he's like transitioned into doing more Lego, or did he have something he used to do, might get back into, anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. And before I answer, I just saw ramen Chinese theater. It's Grauman, Grauman.
Yeah,
And I think that was the original name, but I think it got bought by something else and it has
yeah.
a different
I don't
name.
think it's been
But
Grauman's
Grauman,
Chinese theater in a while. That was like the old
okay.
Hollywood
Like way
That's
back
where
in
Star Wars was. All the big, yeah,
the big premieres. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
They do a lot of movie premieres there though, in
Mhm.
LA. So your question about Philip. So his hobbies, one is he loves, and he still does this, but he loves to make costumes. So
Oh,
he would hand make every year a really intentional, fun, quirky Halloween costume. And I love that you heard ramen. That's amazing. Um, and now I'm hungry for ramen. Yeah, same. And I get super distracted. I wasn't paying attention to the chat, and now it's like I'm
yeah.
noticing it.
I can
Yeah.
remove that. I can silence the plebes. It's okay.
um, but yeah, his costumes. So, fun fact was, I didn't really dress up for Halloween much until I lived in Miami. It was right before I moved to Austin. I had a good friend who threw a huge Halloween party every year, and so I started to dress up for Halloween. And I moved here and met Philip that first summer. And so Halloween was coming, and he was like, "Hey, you want to come to this Halloween party?" And I knew that he took it very seriously and made costumes, but I didn't really know to what extent.
Oh,
um,
yikes.
and so I think I dressed up as Kurt Hummel from Glee that year.
Okay.
Yeah,
That seems a
it
bit on
was
the nose, but
a
we'll
bit
let
on
it
the
slide.
nose.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was, I think, the second season of Glee, and so lots of people were like, "Oh, you're just like Kurt Hummel," and I'm like, "Oh, so we're both gay and sing?" But that's true. There's a lot of
Yeah.
truth. So okay. So yeah, so I leaned into that, which was fun, and it was a pretty easy costume to pull together. And I walk up to this party, and I'm like, I had to park like a block away, so I'm walking up to the house, and I'm like, "That's Marvin the Martian."
Oh,
And then
no.
I get closer and it's Philip, but it's Marvin the Martian, actually. It's not Philip
Yeah.
at all. And he was the costume was just impeccably perfect.
Wow.
And I just was like, that's the dude I'm dating. Like, oh wow. I need to step it up more. And also, wow, that's
Yeah.
impressive.
His
So yeah.
Great and Powerful Oz at Beth's
Ah,
birthday
so good.
party was really, really good. That's very
Yeah.
good.
So yeah, so
Um,
he that's a big hobby of his, and every year, right around July, he starts freaking out about how he doesn't have his idea figured out yet. It's
mhm.
like a routine that from July through August, he just complains about how he doesn't have something. And then he
Yeah.
picks something, and then September becomes chaos in the house, and yeah. But he always
I
pulls together something really great. So
I
yeah.
know, quite a few Rennies and
Mm,
cosplayers who go through about the same timeline. About June or July, they start going, "What am I
mhm.
gonna pull together?
Uh-huh.
I gotta get me some material. I gotta do
Yep.
measurements," and then come about September, they're like, "I have nothing.
I have nothing.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Mhm.
cobble together 5 things from the past 2 years at Dragon Con, and we'll just make it work."
Yep. So
So you and I have done karaoke together,
yay!
and I didn't really know until recently, after watching you on TikTok sing, that you'd actually, gone to school for that.
Mhm.
So what was your education for music like?
Yeah, so I in undergrad I studied music and journalism. I finished the journalism degree. I did not finish the music degree,
Same.
and the reason was I was off by a year on my music theory classes, and the order
Mhm.
that you took them, and when they were offered, I would have had to stay for another year and a half to just to finish those three classes. And I was like, I don't need this degree for what I'm going to do. So,
Yeah.
but I was a vocal performance major, so I studied voice and vocal performance, and my voice teacher was the head of the opera program at my school, and so I ended up studying more opera than I thought I ever would. I had no interest in it until then, and I developed a stronger appreciation for it. I wouldn't say that I learned and mastered it by any means. But yeah, I was it was a huge part of my undergrad since growing up and doing musical theater and music performance my whole life. I played instruments and sang. It just was always a piece of what I always did. And so at the end of college, I went to grad school for my master's in education to work in higher ed.
Mhm.
And that was the first time in I felt like my whole life where I wasn't actively performing
Yeah.
in some type of capacity. And so I really missed it during those 2 years of grad school. And when I moved to Miami, I joined the Miami Gaymen's Chorus. And it was so fun because it was like somewhat theatrical, but it was mostly just like singing,
Oh
but
yeah,
kind
but
of
it's still
a
there's
mix.
an element of performance when when you've got a
Totally.
show choir. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, very, very show choir, very that. And so, super fun, had a blast with it. And when I moved to Austin, I wanted to continue performing, but I didn't want to immediately join the Gay Men's Chorus because I didn't love how it never ended. Like, as soon as one season finished, we would start on music for the next
Mm,
season.
yeah.
And so I said, I'm going to take a break from that and get my grounding in Austin first. And I ended up doing the Zilker Summer Musical that's on the Zilker Hillside. So it's a
Mhm.
free musical that happens in the summer. I did that
Yep.
for 2 summers. And what I love about theater is when the show's over, it's done, and then
Yeah.
you can choose to opt in to audition for something else again or something. So
Which shows
um,
did you do? Do you remember?
I did, of course, yes. So
'Cause I'm trying to
Annie,
think. We went and saw a lot of those shows. It's very
oh,
possible I
fun.
saw you. Yeah.
Maybe. So I was in Annie, which was 2010.
Mhm.
It is not a show I recommend that you do for an entire summer.
No. And you're doing those
um,
and those are outside, and it's
uh,
generally warm, like,
very warm.
very warm.
Very hot, yes. And stage lights add extra heat. And Annie is set in the winter. And
Mhm.
I was in the chorus and had like 7 different roles where I changed outfits. And at one point, I had 2 winter costumes on top of each other and was pretending to warm myself by a fire when I was melting.
Yeah.
So yeah. And also, that's the summer that Philip and I met. And
Mm.
so he came to see Annie 4 or 5 times. And that's what tipped me off that he actually really liked me. I was
That's
like, this is
cute.
not a show you need
Yeah.
to see more than once. Um, and then the next summer I did Footloose, which was probably one of my favorite shows ever. It was
Yeah.
so much fun. It challenged me so much to do dancing in a way that like was beyond what I was used to. So that was really cool. The music is just outstanding. And it
Cool.
was a huge crowd pleaser. So
Yeah.
and then the last show I did was not with Zilker, but up at Sam Bass Theater, a very, very tiny theater in Round Rock.
Mhm.
I did You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and I played Schroeder, which was amazing and fun.
Yeah.
Um,
My
and then
dad did
I
that in
stopped.
dinner theater. He was Linus.
Oh, fun!
Yeah. It was a
That's
fun
awesome.
show. I was a kid, and at the time, I
Yeah,
didn't appreciate musical theater at all,
right?
but
Yeah, yeah.
grew into it later.
Yeah.
So doing all the musical theater, and
Yep.
it's definitely seeped its way into your Lego
Yes,
builds.
it has.
How has that kind of informed how you approach building? I know
For
that,
sure.
um, there in my mind, there's always 2 kind of approaches to building for Lego.
Mhm.
There's generally like an engineering approach or an artistic approach.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like yours is an artistic approach, but I don't want
Yeah.
to assume.
Oh, definitely. I think the engineering piece is the side that like I'm most excited to learn from the builds from building out the Lego sets, and so I think that's also probably why I gravitate towards talking about that in the reviews because to me that's where I'm learning the most.
Yeah,
The art side of things is kind of where I naturally that's where my head typically lives.
yeah.
So I like to look at the story that is being told
Mhm.
and how that's woven in. So like um a couple years ago, 2023, I did a daily builds calendar where every day there was a prompt and there were 6 prompts a week. So Saturday, Sunday was one prompt. And I thought I would do like a month's worth, but I ended up completing the entire year, which was 313 prompts.
Slow down.
Yep, which was nuts. And so, but what I found was the challenges that were engineering based prompts were ones that I would reluctantly do and then find that I liked the most later
Oh,
because I
interesting.
learned the most from them
Yeah.
often. And the challenges that were storytelling were the ones that I would fly through.
Hmm.
But I felt like my skills grew more from getting me outside my comfort zone and doing things that which coincidentally, so that was 2023. I was sharing those builds every day on social media, and people had grown to expect it and see it. And then I got on Lego Masters, and we were told not to tell anybody. And I couldn't just disappear and
Hmm.
not share those. And so I built 8 weeks of daily builds the week before I left for filming so that I would have them all ready. And
Yeah.
I shared them
Look
and
at you
pretended like I
as a
was home.
content creator thinking ahead like that.
So that was exhausting, but it was fun. It
Yeah.
also I think that also was kind of like pseudo training for the show because it was like all these random prompts, do them.
Yeah.
So
So speaking
um,
of the show, we're gonna
yeah, yeah.
this is we're gonna jam a segue in here. But it's I know a lot of people are probably curious about it, and I know most of the people in the chat are people we know from our lug and have gone to
Hmm.
watch parties, and I know you've answered
Yay!
a lot of these questions already.
Yeah, yeah,
But for those who haven't,
sure.
what and it's limited to what we can talk about. So I'm just
Yeah,
gonna
of
do
course.
some like general, what do you think of kind of things. Was there someone or something that surprised you as part of the process of making the show? In general, not just the builds, but like
Hmm.
from soup to nuts, like what was kind of the biggest shock to you, like you didn't think was part of that process?
Okay. So the way that producing a reality show for TV works
Mhm.
was fascinating to me. And so we were each assigned a story producer who would watch us during the challenge and then would interview us and ask us questions about what happened. So that we would have, hi, Chloe, so that we would have some memory of what we were supposed to be talking about. So
Right.
like it was those behind the scenes things that I think were I didn't know how it all came together and I thought that was fascinating. And the two production teams that I thought were so interesting were like I went in expecting camera crew and expecting microphones and hair and makeup
Right.
and whatever. What I didn't think about was there's a challenge producer team. So
Mhm.
these are the people who design the challenge, they test it, they make sure that it's fair, they make sure that it's possible, they make sure that you have the supplies in the brick pit that you would need to actually accomplish that challenge. And they were also the ones who staffed the replenishing of supplies on the set and everything. So all of that I think was like, whoa, this is mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yep.
Um, the process of I just lost my page.
No worries.
Now you and I auditioned for it at one point a long
We
time ago.
did.
I
Yeah.
auditioned for it again with our another lug mate, Will.
Hmm.
Um, when you so for those who don't know, you can be approached to
Hmm.
audition for the show, or you can just audition for the show.
Yes. Hmm.
There's different avenues. In a lot of cases, um, there's a casting company that will kind of reach out to social media people or lug people or something like that, and just say, "We're casting a wide net. Would you like to audition?" And in most
Yes.
cases, they'll get a handful, and they just put it out on TV or the internet or whatever, and just says, "If you want to, go to this website and apply." Right?
Yep.
Um, Knowing that you and I didn't make it,
Hmm.
what was your what made you then wanna go approach John and say, "I think we would be a good match for this," or were
Yeah.
you then approached by like, the casting group saying, "We've seen you before, we think you're great, we need to match you with somebody." How did that process go through?
Yeah. So first, just to touch on the piece of the two different ways that you can go into the show. It is actually true that you can apply on your own and not be approached and actually make it on the show. So
Yep.
there are teams that get through that process. I think a lot of times people assume it's only people who are approached that actually get through and that that's their like legal requirement, but that's actually not true. So it feels threatened by John.
I've seen John's cactus. I got
You
no
have.
worries. No.
So the show had actually been reaching out to me and Philip since season one, and asking if we would be interested. And I would say that when they reach out to you, they reach out to a lot of people.
Yep.
Like it is casting their net as wide as possible because they know that even if I'm not ready or not interested or not capable or whatever, or not available, I might know someone who is, who I
Mhm.
could help connect them to. And so I do think part of it was, oh, cool, it's a queer couple. They might be interested in being on TV. They do think about diversity, which I think is important. I don't believe that I was cast on the show because I'm queer, but I do think that that's a component that they care about and value.
Mhm.
And they want different types of stories. They don't want all siblings and that's all the teams, right? So,
Right.
or just like friends from Lugs and that's like every single team. So
Yeah.
they want something that's going to be a story that people will like find enjoyable from a human interest standpoint. And I appreciate that and value that. When you and I auditioned, I think part of that too was Philip. Throughout the previous years, I wasn't sure that I was even ready to go on it,
Yeah.
and Philip wasn't. And then that year, when you and I auditioned, Philip wasn't ready, and I was like, I still want to put my name out there. We'll see. Um, and then that the next year or whatever, sometime, some cycle, I was talking with someone who ended up being on season 4 and I didn't know it. And I asked them, hey, have you ever thought about being on the show? And they were like, their answer was
Actually.
cryptic. Yeah. And I was like, wait, I think if I read between the lines, and that person ended up saying, I think you would be great for it. I actually think that you and Philip would be great to go together. And we were trying to convince Philip to be ready. And Philip and I were actually preparing to audition together with
Mm.
the expectation that they would film in February like they had every other year.
Yeah.
And then they rushed everything forward and it filmed in October and they were recruiting in August. And we had just started those conversations.
Mm.
And so it ended up being impossible for both of us to be away from work at that same time in October. It just wasn't
'Cause I mean,
realistic.
even in your shortened run, it's a lot to be
It's a
away from.
lot. It
Yeah.
really is. Yeah, and given that it was the end of the year, a lot of people had already used up vacation time earlier in the year too, and like it just would be really challenging. So, um, I told Philip like, I really want to do this, and they seem interested in me. So, would you be willing to like? Would you be okay with me putting my name out there and yeah, trying with another person? And so I specifically was looking for another queer builder, in part because that would make me feel comfortable, as well as
Yeah.
I knew that that was something that was important to the show too. And I had met John through Instagram like a year before.
Mhm.
So we had chatted quite a bit and I knew his personality and I thought his personality is great for TV.
Yeah, he was a
um,
huge personality at Brick Rodeo
yeah.
last year, just,
Mhm.
he was all over the place talking to everybody.
And that's just like who he is. Like he
Yeah.
just naturally has this big persona, which is great. And it's genuine, like which I love.
Yeah.
Sometimes with people like that, it's not, but with him, it truthfully is. And so we'd never built together. Like there were a lot of nerves I had going into it, and probably him too.
Mhm.
And I think in some people's cases, they go on the show with someone that they don't know all that well, and it maybe goes well or maybe goes okay, maybe
Yeah.
doesn't go well. In our case, it was fantastic, and we became really good friends as a result. So
That's excellent. Yeah.
um, I do think it can work, but I think part of what made it work is we have really good communication with each other,
Mhm.
and I felt safe to just be blunt with him, which is not my normal. And because he made sure that I knew that's what he wanted
Yeah.
and received it well. And then in turn, he was able to do that kind of vice versa too. So,
Nice.
yeah.
And he's from Dallas.
Yeah.
So Tony and Joe, you and John,
Hmm.
um, and,
Ian and
um,
Sage.
Ian and Sage, all from Texas. Do you think that was a coincidence? Do you think they
That was
just
weird.
threw a net over Texas this time, or do you think this was like you had been doing it for a couple of years? I don't know about Tony and Joe. I don't know
Yeah,
about
yeah.
Ian and Sage.
Totally, totally.
Ian's been this builder. He's been at conventions for a while and just has been like knocking it out of the park with like his
Hmm.
realism
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
builds. and they've always been really great. Were they waiting for his sister to be old enough to like be in a TV show? Or, I mean, was it just kind of the stars aligned to get all those Texas teams in?
It was surprising to me too that we had so many. So in the casting process, they do like some different layers that we're not allowed to talk too much about, but you could probably guess that we had to build something with other people.
Yeah.
So in that phase of it, there was even another team from Texas that was in that process, and
Wow.
Ian and Sage weren't in that room with us. So it was John and I, Anthony and Joe, and then this other team. And I was like, wow, there's 3 Texas teams here. And then after we knew we were cast and were moving through, we had some Zoom calls and stuff. So I knew Anthony and Joe had made it, but I didn't realize Sage and Ian had. And I got to breakfast the day after we moved to Atlanta. And I turned around, like I was making my breakfast. I hadn't had my coffee, so I was not awake. And Ian says, Justin. And I turned around and I was shocked to see him because
Yeah.
I didn't think they would have more than 2 Texas teams. But also, literally, I was like, oh shoot, this guy's really good. Like
Yeah.
that was because he's so good. He really is. And he's a genuinely nice guy too, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, wow, this is that was kind of my first moment of like, this is gonna be tough, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was totally random. And like when when we realized, oh my gosh, 6 of the 22 of us are in Texas, like that's not normal. I think
No.
season 4 had a few that were from Pacific Northwest area,
I was gonna say, I
maybe.
think one of them had
But
California or PNW,
yeah,
like, a lot,
yeah.
you know?
Um, but yeah, that was it was exciting. And then also like I didn't realize that I knew that I had met Anthony. Like we had followed each other on Instagram. I'm sure we met at a brick rodeo.
He
But
was
I
at a lug bulk sort. He brought his whole family up because
That's
he was
awesome.
taking them all back to Houston, so I was just like, he's a sweet guy too.
I love it. He is. He's great. He's become a very close friend of mine through this whole experience, which is fun.
Um,
But
would
yeah.
you who was the most that you would say you were surprised by,
Hmm.
um, in terms of, like, building quality, say, or maybe, like,
Hmm.
the biggest personality? I know that
Yeah.
you're limited in time because some people have to go and you don't have a lot of time to, like, hang out afterwards and stuff like that, so I don't know if
Totally. Yeah.
you got a lot of information from just being there.
Yeah. It is interesting because like the time flew by and they worked us very hard. Our filming process was faster than most typically are for the show in the past. And so it was speeding through pretty quickly. But so I came in knowing Ian, knowing John, of course, and loosely knowing Anthony, but not really knowing much about his builds or whatever.
Mhm.
I think during the training, so they had like what they call it training, but it's like the first few days where you're just kind of getting to know each other a little bit, and they're talking about how the show's going to film and all these different things. And we had like one sample build that we had to do for that time, and I remember that day just being like, oh my gosh, everyone here is so good, and also seeing how different teams were good at different things.
Right.
And so that's where I was like, the way I was looking at it was, they're better than me at this. They're better than me
Mhm.
at this. Like I was downplaying anything we had to offer because I was nervous about like the competition. Ben and Michael are incredible sculptors that you
Yeah.
haven't really gotten to see yet as much on the show. Like you saw some of their sculpting work, but like a lot of what they've done, um, I think I feel like that was something that we discovered early on with them, and our first real sculpting challenge was the 3rd week, um, and obviously incredibly talented at the technical side of things.
I was gonna say they seem very technical too.
Very, yeah, yeah. They were well-rounded in their skill sets.
Yeah.
Um, Joe is super good at the technical components and movement and those things, and Anthony is excellent at sculpting. And so they were also a power team.
Yeah.
Um, and then I would say, like from a personality-wise standpoint, um, Ian surprised me at how big and bold he could be because what I thought I remembered of him from Brick Rodeo was very quiet and
Same.
like
Yeah.
behind the scenes. And so it really shocked me when this huge personality came out. But then as I got to know him better, I was like, I think it's just when he's in his comfort zone and like just getting him in the right space. And the show brought that out in him and his
Yeah.
sister, I think being there really is probably what brought it out in him. Um, Anthony shocked me that we left. feeling like he's someone that is one of my closest friends. Like, I really,
Nice.
really valued that friendship that came out of this experience, and, it really was awesome to see, like, you can, just have totally different interests, totally different backgrounds, but still be, like, super close in different ways, so,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Was there anybody that you thought, "I can't believe that I've met them," when you got
hmm,
there? I mean, probably the judges for sure,
yeah.
but, um, did you
Yeah.
know anybody ahead of time via social or saw their work or anything?
I really didn't, which is interesting. So other than Ian, which,
Right.
I already knew him, um, and Anthony, so those 2 I knew through social and through Brick Rodeo. Everyone else was unknown to me, which was really fun, because, with our season in particular, they just picked a lot of people that were not as involved in social media. In
Mhm.
past seasons, I think they'd had more people that were more active, and so,
Yeah.
that was an interesting and nice change. I was surprised when people knew me because my social following is still, I don't see it as this big thing. So when a few people knew me, I was like, "What? Oh, that's cool."
I feel
And
like
weird.
too, that was early on for Lego, and so that
It
was
was.
quasi free advertising. If they got a bunch of people who had a huge following, they wouldn't have to work as hard to promote the show
Totally,
because they had a
totally.
bunch of people doing that. Now they don't have to. They can actually kind of curate the personalities a little bit better, the people, the builders kind of thing,
Yeah.
which speaks very highly of your skill and your
Thank you.
ability to be a nice person on television, which I think is a shock for a lot of people to see that.
Thank you.
Beth
Yeah.
wants to know if you weren't on the show and were watching as just a fan, who would you be rooting for?
Ooh, good question.
This is the
Um
I'm going to either answer this or take a bite of this hot wing question because I don't want to answer it.
Yeah. Yeah. There are so many teams that were so good in so many different ways. I would say Anthony and Joe. And then I'm like, that's probably super biased because I became good friends with them too.
Yeah,
Sage and Ian as well, like their character work and whatnot. I really can't wait for y'all to see Monday. Just there's so many really. That's when I think also I grew a deeper appreciation for some of the teams that I just hadn't seen as much or like
yeah,
spent. And part of it too was like this whole weird thing about it is we're watching the show now, and this is almost kind of the first time we're actually seeing each other's builds.
yeah,
And the reason I say that is when you are spending 4 hours on a build challenge or 6 hours, you are focused on yours and that's it. And
yeah,
as soon as it's over, you walk out of the room and you are thinking about judging. And then judging happens and it's over, and you're all of a sudden back at the hotel. And you're like,
yeah.
wait, I didn't really see anybody else's builds.
Plus, unless
Um,
you're interacting with it like your Wicked builds, the builds are like
exactly.
way up there, and
Way
you
far
can't see any
away.
of their stuff.
Yep, yep. So, the Wicked, episode, because we all had to use power functions, it was awesome to watch on the screen this week because we heard people talk about their power functions, but we were standing behind them, and the power
Yeah,
function would face that way towards the judges. So, like, and none of us had a chance to like go to each other's build tables and check them out.
yeah,
I do think in past seasons they had a little bit more time for some of the challenges to where they could do that a little bit more, but also, I think some of that is just the culture of our season. We didn't really think to do that because we were rushing to work
yeah.
hard.
Everything felt
So,
abbreviated.
yeah, yeah. So I feel like the third challenge, the sculpting challenge, waterfall. It was the first time that we were able to see each other's builds a little bit more up close.
Yeah,
And we all got to see a slow motion video of it falling, which was cool. So they did
that
show us
that was
one
very
camera angle.
cool.
Yeah. We were nervous that they were going to crash them and then the slow motion would only be when it airs on TV.
Oh, yeah,
But they did like show us one clip. It was from an angle, so it wasn't, we saw better clips in TV, which was cool later.
yeah.
Um, so yeah. And then but yeah, so anyway, I think as the challenges progressed, different teams caught my eye for different reasons. Um, but yeah, they're all so good. They're all wonderful people. Also,
Good
15
generic
out of
answer.
22, thank you. 15 out of 22 will be at Brick Rodeo, which
Oh,
is gonna
wow.
be nuts, but is I'm excited because it'll be like a family reunion for us.
Right,
So
that'll be yeah, and you haven't
yeah.
seen some of these people in like a year and a half, so I mean,
Yeah,
it'll be
yeah.
kinda nice.
It'll be a big deal.
Um,
Yeah. I
Brick
see
the
the
System,
question.
I
Yeah.
think this is James.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
much of your involvement with the show influenced you to apply to be an ambassador? So the
Yeah.
timing is a little weird because I feel like in my timeline,
Yeah.
you were ambassador all the time. You were,
Mm.
an FM for a while. But then finding out that you'd done this a year and a half ago, the timing kind of like lined up really well to be like, oh, well, that's kind of when he got, into the ambassador program with the
Mm.
land. Was it? But then, old man memory kind of shorts out a little bit. So
Yeah.
maybe you can tell us what it was like.
Yeah. So first off, I'm going to touch on something else that James said in the chat was just John is also a great guy. He also really pulls his weight. Absolutely true. Like
Yep.
having never built with him before, I didn't fully know what to expect. And his presence on social media up until that point had mostly been showing sets he'd built. And I
Mm,
knew he did mocks, but he hadn't shown as much of that. And so there was a lot of unknown there, and it was so fun to build with him and see where his strengths complemented mine, and see where like I could trust him on something and he could trust me on something, and it worked out really well. So
yeah.
major props to him, and it was yeah, so cool, so cool. Anyway, so to answer the question, so I applied to be fan media or I got accepted to be Family Media May 2023. I applied for Lego Masters and auditioned and whatever. I think that whole process was like September. And
Hmm.
then we moved in October and filmed. And so it technically was before. I had wondered if the show knew or cared that I was fan media, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And part of that was I was on their radar because we'd already talked through you and I auditioning, and then through my friend who was on season 4, passed my name on and said, like, basically, there's tiers of the casting, and most people talk about this tier, and then there's that goes up to the other person above that person, or that, yeah. Anyway, the head of the casting. So the head of the casting then had me on his radar, but that wasn't from fan media. It was more from he heard from a past contestant.
Got it.
Then on the flip side, I wondered if fan media knew and if it mattered. And more so, I was going to be away during a time when I was getting some review sets, and I was like, I'm going to miss the dates when I'm supposed to have
Oh,
these
I hadn't
done
even
and
thought about
whatever.
that. Did you have to
Yeah.
do anything like ahead of time or?
I did 2 sets ahead of time and had them ready to go. So that was a part of the prep to leave.
Yeah.
And then I told them, actually, I don't think I told them that I was going for filming. I told them when I came back from filming, "Hey, I've been gone doing this thing."
Better ask for
Um,
forgiveness than
yeah,
permission, I
yeah.
guess. Yeah.
And so I was like, "Can I have a little bit of grace on being a little bit behind on some of these reports and stuff?" And so they
Yeah.
were super kind about it. And now they all know, because well, everybody knows now, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so anyway, the timing was before. There is someone who's in my cast, my season, Maya, who has an amazing YouTube, and y'all need to check her out. She's so good. I think it's MB Bricks,
Hmm.
MB,
Yeah.
and she does incredible medieval stuff and Jurassic stuff, like awesome landscaping. But she had her own YouTube channel that was thriving already. And after the show, she chatted with me a lot about like, what does it mean to be fan media? Do you think it'd be something I'd be interested in? And she ended up applying and getting it, which is really, really cool. I'm
Yeah.
super
Her
proud of
stuff's
her.
really, really good.
It is. And she's super sweet. And her dad, Jamie, was like one of my favorite people. So funny, so nice, like
Hmm.
just awesome. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to ham-handedly segue into another section of questions
Sounds
here.
good. Yeah.
I'm going to get to James' question in a second. I know you wanted to maybe cut out at 9:30. So
I'm
how you
okay.
feeling? You're
I'm
okay?
good.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Want to respect the
I
person
appreciate
here.
that. Thank you. Yeah.
Justin does have a Lego idea set,
Oh yeah.
and I'm going to put a link up at here. This is
Thank you.
his idea set, and if you are in our lug, you've seen most of these. If you've been to one of the Bricks and Minifigs here in Austin, you've seen most of these.
Hmm.
But this is a really fantastic idea that you've come up with,
Thank
and
you.
this was born out of kind of those building prompts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so everybody take a look at that when you can. You don't have to go now. You can go now. I don't care. I'm not CBS, and I'm not ranking your viewership or anything. Um, when you what was it like when you realized you wanted to build your own mocks? What was that moment like
Mm,
when you went from, oh, I really enjoy building the winter villages and I really enjoy building
mhm.
these sets
Yeah, yeah.
to I could do my own stuff.
Yeah.
Was it something you carried over? Because everybody had their dark age, and we talked about that. Did you do a lot of that when you were a kid and just didn't really pick it up again until you were an adult, or did you roll into adult building Lego already doing like your own models, your own
Mm.
adjustments to the models that came out, kind of stuff?
Yeah. It's so the start of mocking for me and for Philip um was this is so cheesy, but it was going to Brickfest Live. And the reason
Breakfast
for that is
Live.
I know, right? The reason though was they had a wall of 16 by 16 mosaics where they just did the 16 by 16 plates and they had 1 by 1 bricks
Hmm.
and you could do your own mosaic pictures. And so we learned from them how to set that up and we made a little wall at home that had 5 32 by 32 base plates wide and started just do these little mosaics. And it was like minimal, very small, not like a ton of thought that went into them. It was, and honestly, I started by looking at cross stitch patterns because that maps perfectly to 1 by 1
Yeah, that
dot.
makes total sense.
Yeah, yeah. It was like, and my art background and other crafting things like that just was already at my disposal.
Yeah.
So we did that, and we got the little shadow box because we'd visited what used to be Creative Brick Builders, I think was the
Hmm.
store in
Yeah.
Round Rock, and they had that on display there. And so that was like the let's build these little tiny things. I didn't see it as mocking. I saw it as like, oh, we're just like making little cute things. Like it
This is what
wasn't
you do with Lego. This is all.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just playing, right? And for me, I saw myself at the time as a Lego photographer. So I
Oh,
was like building these scenes with the idea of taking fun pictures with them and decorating with them. And
yeah.
truthfully, I wasn't that great at the photography side of things. It was just like, that's in my
Well,
head. I
that's
was like, that's
interesting
what I
because
do.
I had mentioned before, like the making outfits and doing different scenes and doing mosaics.
Hmm.
There's literally a section that we kind of, as chairs of the conventions, we kind of had to not submit to or bow to, but there were a lot of people saying there's no photography.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
there's no category for photography, but that's all I
totally.
really do is
Hmm.
I take minifigure or small model in nature photography, and or I recreate movie posters or movie scenes or something like that. So that's another avenue, and we've added a channel to our Discord that's just Lego photography. So the fact that
Hmm.
you're like, I was just doing Lego photography, I'm like, of course you were. But it's a
Yeah,
whole different approach to it that I think some
totally.
people don't. It lends into or leans into toy photography too, which makes a little
Yeah.
more sense. But it's that same sort of, I'm putting it in a natural situation and making it look
Hmm.
a way that's not just I'm just building this thing. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, it was, that's yeah, I totally agree. And I think that was something where, like, in my head, that was how I engaged with the hobby because we were what started our Instagram account and all these other things was the photos we took of our minifigs on vacation. So
Hmm.
there, I was being really intentional about the photography and was having so much fun with it. Now, when we go on vacations, we still bring our sig figs. We pack for them, and they have little supplies to take pictures of them elsewhere.
Right.
But
If
I
anybody
don't
doesn't have sig figs, you need to get a
right?
pair of sig figs. Like,
Yes,
yeah,
yes. Ours are, I think, actually in the other room because I just took them to an event that I was at
we did that
yesterday,
in New
but
York too. We just here
yeah,
we are in the Brooklyn Bridge. Here we are in the
right?
Lego store.
Mhm. It's just fun. It's a lot
Yeah.
of fun. But yeah, so once we actually what really ramped up the mocking for me was joining TextLug.
Mm.
100%. I'm a huge advocate for lugs. I think everyone, if you have one near you, should be involved. If you don't have one near you, you should get involved in a Lego online community or a lock
Or start your
because
own lug.
or start your own exactly.
Yeah.
So I loved one of the first seed part challenges we had after I joined was to make a 8 stud wide modular.
Hmm.
And so that
I
was
had
a
that until like a month ago when I finally took it apart because I needed the parts for
ah,
it. I had
that's
it
so fun.
forever. Yeah, that was a
I
fun
love
one.
that. Yeah, it was a really fun one. And it was an accessible challenge for me to feel like, okay, I can do this because we're already building on 6 by 12 base plates. And what I didn't realize, and now I look back on it and realize it for sure, is building in that small scale taught me how to build with tiny minifigure scale detail,
Mhm.
and be really intentional about the pieces you're using. And
Yeah.
so that translated well to this little skinny building because I filled it with all these little scenes. And then another challenge shortly thereafter, we got base plates that had the roads on them,
Mhm.
and we were supposed to build a building facade.
Yeah.
And I was so intimidated by that challenge. And I was like, I felt at the time, I felt like I have to do this because I was given the space plate. I owe them this. Like
Yeah.
it felt like a contract, which now I know like we're so supportive of people doing whatever they do.
Yeah.
But I tinkered and toyed around with building out a building facade, and I finally got something I really enjoyed, and then that ended up becoming my first modular mock. And
Oh, yeah.
I ended up building out a full actual modular from it, and I went into it thinking there's no way I can even do like the front of this building.
Yeah.
And so it was really the encouragement, the push, the challenge nature of it of like, here's a prompt, run with it, that got me to really bust out of my shell and grow as a builder. And I think that's when I started to see myself as a mock builder, was like,
Yeah.
oh, no, I am doing this. Like I'm
Mhm.
contributing something
And
that's
it's
new and different.
it makes you feel a little, you get that little rush of accomplishment when you're like, "I did that," and it's
Yeah, yeah.
while you're building it, you can kinda get that flow state going where, like,
Hmm.
the ideas just kinda hit. It's very
Yeah.
addictive.
I I have another mock across the room that I'm gonna go grab to show you
Okay.
because this came out of the lug as well. So a couple years into being involved in the lug, I want to say this was 2021. So this is maybe 4 years later. I think that's true. The lug got I think Will was the ambassador at the time, but he had shared that if you have anybody in your lug that does pop culture building, to submit their names for a cool pop culture activity.
Mhm.
And I was selected, and or I submitted my name through Will. I was selected for this opportunity with Lego, and had no clue what it was going to be. I just knew that they thought of me as a pop culture builder, and I said yes, that's what I do. And I was expecting it to be like movies because that's where my head goes,
Yeah.
and it was actually around the Vespa. And so they asked me to build a brick built poster advertising the Vespa set in some way. And um, that was all the direction I was given, was
Mm.
brick built poster. They also gave me the brand guidance around the Vespa about who they are as a company, so that you could read a little bit about what their values are, which was just fascinating. Plus, my husband works in brand advertising and stuff, so like we just geeked out over all that stuff
Oh, I bet
together.
that was lovely.
And then they mailed me the Vespa set, and I got to build it, and then had to do photography with the Vespa set with my model. So this I still have, and I think I'll keep up forever. But this was my brick built poster,
Mhm.
and I remember being so intimidated by this project at first. And now I look at it and I'm like, there's 27 million ways I would fix this or improve on this.
Exactly, yeah.
But like one of the
The
things I
artist
was so
mentality.
exactly, it's never good enough.
Yeah.
One of the things I remember being so proud about was building my little microscale Vespa in the corner. That like I had to source that specific blue color, which at the time was very rare. And it just was like this to me symbolizes a lot of and reminds me a lot of my confidence growing.
Mhm.
And then I submitted this and I was nervous it wasn't good enough. And I got such positive, uplifting responses from people that were just so, it really helped me see my work in a different way.
Yeah.
And I would say that is true for every time I've displayed at a convention. And I will always recommend to everyone, display at a convention. It will boost your self-esteem and confidence because everyone will come over and see your work in new eyes and give you a different perspective on it.
And I feel like I'll add on to that a little bit. If you're displaying for the first time at a convention, don't set up your model and then walk away.
Yes, agreed. Yeah.
The subsequent years absolutely do that, because conventions are a strange beast where you want to meet the public and you want to show off your Lego skills and your models that you've built. but there's also all these great people around that you want to interact with, and there's workshops and there's games and there's a full weekend of stuff that you could be doing, or you could be sitting behind your model all day. But that
Right.
first year or two, I would highly recommend just sitting at your model so you can feel what it's like to engage with the public, because that's a big part of being a Lego builder, is engaging with the public and
Hmm.
drawing people in so you can spark the creativity in in the little kids or the adults who don't think it's something for adults to build. And you can say, look, I'm doing it. It's fun, and answer
Hmm.
questions and be a little proud of what you did and that kind of thing. So highly recommended.
Absolutely. Couldn't
So
agree more.
your idea submission,
Yes.
um, and my 10 regular viewers will understand my thought processes on ideas, because I also have submitted an idea set.
Okay.
But
You have one up right
how,
now? Do
huh?
you have one up right now?
No, I this
Oh.
my old owl was like
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
6 years ago or something like that. And the the process has changed a little bit since then, but not much.
Mhm.
They've changed their stance on IPs a little bit. Um, they've changed their stance on don't build something that we don't have a license for. They generally
Mhm.
will just reject it because
Yeah.
it's hard to get a license for, but they won't reject it because they don't have a license for it. If it's something that's really well built, they'll accept it. And if it meets other criteria, it just then becomes, will you get the needed votes? Do you have a good campaign behind it? Everything. So when you were submitting yours, what part of the process surprised you the most? How would you characterize how you went through getting yours set up?
Yeah. So first off, the idea was well, this is actually my second submission. So my first submission probably taught me some things that I applied to my second one, if I think about
Yeah.
it. I almost forgot about it. So back in whenever I made my modular mock, that was the record shop and coffee shop. I had also made, and I can't remember the order. That maybe that was my second modular. Anyway, I made a 16 by 32 wide, yeah, deep, whatever that would be called, like half a modular, basically that size,
Hmm.
modular building that was for Little Shop of Horrors. And that was my first one I submitted on Lego Ideas. That was also earlier when they were a little less strict about IP.
Hmm.
And so I didn't run into any issues of it being rejected because of IP, which is one of the most frustrating things when you've worked hard on something and then you're like, oh, never mind, this
Yeah.
can't count. But they, with that one, I found that you had to really hustle and ask people every day to vote.
Hmm.
And I do not like self promotion. It's
Yeah.
one of my least favorite things in the world. And I feel uncomfortable about it. And so when I was working on this one, so my holiday buddies, there's one for every month of the year. And a few things. One is I learned what my elevator pitch is. So these are my holiday buddies. There's one for every month of the year, starting with January going to December, for instance, and then I would point to one. So, for instance, this one is my Valentine's one, or this one is my Halloween one. And when I'm displaying them at conventions, that's my elevator pitch. And then often I'll ask people like, "Oh, what month is your birthday?" So, like, "Oh, cool. So you would be Rainbow Ray because you're June, or
Yeah.
you would be, whatever." So part of it is learning how to deliver it and share it. Also, I'm giving all this advice, and I have a tiny amount of votes on it, and it's going to expire, I think, before it hits 1,000 votes. So
Yeah.
I'd love to get to 1,000. That'd be cool. But I at this point am not. I don't have as much faith in it actually making it through, unfortunately. But I do think have your elevator pitch ready. Make it as easy as possible for people to vote. So a QR code that goes directly to your page, and then have some type of way that you can keep people engaged with you as they're voting, so that they actually follow through with it. Because so many people will scan it and say they'll do it later because the Wi-Fi is bad in the convention hall or
Oh
whatever.
yeah.
Like, and then they won't. Like, that's
Yeah.
just a reality, right? And so being able to speak about it quickly, and then also have something that allows you to promote it regularly. So someone who's excellent at this is the brick consultant. He
I was gonna ask you about that because you just recently talked to him about
I
this.
did, yeah, yeah. So I interviewed him for, my, YouTube and, last month actually, and I built his, um, typewriter set. So he's the designer of the typewriter set that was, through LEGO Ideas a handful of years ago. And he has a current one up that is, a LEGO Maker's Kit, and the idea is every module teaches you a different movement technique, and they're super clever and super fun.
It's super slick, yeah.
It's so good, and so in his social media, he does little simple movement mechanisms all the time, but now he's tying those regular posts every time back to his set. And
Mhm.
so he'll show the new thing that draws people in because it's new and different, and then it ties back into if you like this, that vote for this.
Right.
Um, for me, with these being monthly, I have a chance every month to share it where it doesn't feel as much like self promotion.
Mm.
Because on the first of every month, I can say, Happy May, Happy June, Happy July.
Yeah.
And then I've tried to find a second day during the month that naturally fits. So, for instance, I could do 4th of July, and that's 2 days that are real close to each other, the first and the
Yep.
fourth. Or like Rainbow Ray is a rainbow and is holding a pride flag. And so, like, I could share that multiple times this month for pride around different things. And it feels to me a little less like, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me.
Yeah. But
That
that is
said,
hard. The self-promotion is
it's so
hard.
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That when I
yeah.
was doing comic book art, the people that because there was a group of us who all kind of started together and we all various skills, I would say we're all similarly skilled.
Mhm.
But the people who made it, which
Yeah,
means, you got paying work, you weren't like
right.
super famous, but the people who got the paying work were the 90% self-promoters. Like
Yep.
that's all they did. It's and
Yeah.
it's thankless and it's tireless and it's a little
It's exhausting.
soul-sucking,
Yeah, yeah.
and exhausting, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I can't imagine
Yeah.
the successful ideas because that's years too. It's not like just a
Mhm.
month or 2. A
No.
successful idea project, you have to, like, drum that up for years to
Yeah.
keep it up in people's consciousness, getting the
Yep.
votes for it,
Yeah.
and then eventually, if it makes it, working with a team and doing all this other stuff, but, um,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm almost glad mine didn't because it would've just been like, "This is all I do now, is
Yeah.
this stupid little thing," you
This
know?
is my life. Yeah, yeah.
But I do wish you luck on it. I
Yeah.
think they're
Thank you.
fantastic. I hope
Thank
that if
you.
they
Yeah.
don't make it, they find a life on Rebrickable or
Yeah.
on, maybe like the Bricklink designer program. Is
Mhm.
that something? I mean, I think you have to
It's
wait
of
like
interest to
3
me.
years or something.
There's the some time frame that, yeah,
Yeah,
is prohibitive of that, but, my thought is, like, I've enjoyed first off, they were all built out of love, and it was so much fun, and so the process to get there just was a joy, so at least the building side of it was cool, and
right.
honestly, I would share them as I would finish them before they were up on ideas, and I was like, "This is my new one for February, this is my new one for March," and people responded
Because you have to. You
so.
have to show it
You
off.
do.
Yeah,
Exactly, yeah, yeah. But people were so positive about them, and I cannot tell you the number of AFOLs who've told me, "This would be great as a set," and I'm like, "Thank you, can you
yeah,
vote for it?" And I don't think they did.
yeah.
Like, I
It's
don't.
really hard to
Yeah,
translate.
it is. So, it's also the other thing I would say is a big piece of advice, and I hate this, but it's true. Most sets that make it to the 10,000 votes are sets that are, connected to an IP
Mm,
because you don't just have AFOLs voting for it, you have a fan base. So a dear friend
it's
of
some
mine, Nick.
nostalgia or something.
Yeah, yeah, like, Nick who, he was on LEGO Masters with me, he's incredible, and I would say definitely check him out, you didn't get to see enough of him on the show. He's Lobster Thermidor Builds, which is a reference to the LEGO Batman movie, which I
Yeah.
love. Um, he designed the Twilight set, and in
Mhm.
his case, it literally got to 10,000 in 1 day, which is not normal.
Yeah,
So don't expect that first off. But secondly, it's because of the Twilight fans.
yeah.
So like that's why we've seen at this point probably 10 to 15 Taylor Swift ones that have gotten to 10,000 votes.
Because people know they've seen what
Yeah,
happens. Yeah,
exactly. That said, how many of those actually become a set? That's very few. So that's
yeah.
where like my hope was if Holiday Buddies ever actually made it, and this, I don't think this is patting myself on the back so much as it's just knowing how Lego works with products. I do think that they might make that a real set
Yeah.
because it's no IP, so there's no legal issue that they'd have to run into. They already make holiday decoration type things, so this would fit in pretty naturally. They could choose to make 3 of them. They could
Yeah.
choose to make 4 of them. It wouldn't even have to be all 12, and they could do it seasonal to where it's like 1 per quarter or whatever. So, like, I think that's where I'm like, if I can just somehow convince people
Yeah.
to bump it up there. But the reality is, like, I think most idea sets that get the votes easy are IP, but about half, well, I don't know if that's true. It seems like about half of the idea sets that make it are not IP. Maybe that's
Yeah.
not right. I have
I
to look
think
and see.
too, the ones that seem to make it seem to have a very good package.
Yes,
And it's not just I made a great build and
yeah,
here's a photo of it.
totally.
There's good graphics that go along with it.
Hmm.
There's great photography. There's all kinds of there may be a video with the builder
Yep.
talking about it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a full PR package wrapped around
Yes.
this thing. And I
That is
think the
so
more
true.
successful ones are the ones that, again, are 70-80% self-promotion and
Yep.
very not very little because the build itself took a lot of time, but if you really think that it's a good solid piece that people might like, then you'll
Yeah,
put the love and attention into making the package around it, and it's just so
for
hard
sure.
to wrap your head around that.
It really
Um
is, and it takes time and effort, and, um, I will also say, pay very close attention to the rules on the LEGO Ideas website of what can and cannot be in photos,
Mhm.
because I did not do the best. I tried to rush getting them up online so that I could have it ready before Brick Rodeo last year,
Right.
because I wanted to have a captive audience that I could have scan a QR code and vote. And that was smart, timing it that way. But what was not smart is rushing the photos and such because my cover photo did not make it clear that these are monthly builds. And it just looks
Mhm.
like this weird collection of characters.
Right.
And so this year, coming into January, I submitted a whole new package of photos that showed and made it abundantly clear what they were. And I included words on the pages that said the name of them and the month. So Disco Danny January,
Yeah.
um, Henrique Hart February, etc. And it got rejected. And I was told you can't have words on the page.
Mm.
And it was like, but what I need for people to know is that this is a January build. This is a
Right.
February build. And then I went back and forth, resubmitting, and kept getting dinged for something being wrong. And their warnings are stock warnings that sound scary. So it's like, if you submit again without making the right changes, we will completely remove your project altogether. And I
Yeah.
was like, what? Ah, so I got really nervous about that because I was like, I'm trying my best to follow your rules, but also I'm trying to accomplish this change.
Yeah.
And it ended up being that they let me keep the month name on the pages because they were like, oh, we
Yeah,
understand what
now
you're
we
trying to
get
do
it.
now.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that also happened because I reached out to someone on Instagram and was like, hey, I know you work on the ideas team.
There
Can
was
you help me?
actually I went through a similar thing with the
Yeah.
challenges. They have the
Yeah.
ideas
Yeah.
challenges, right?
Yeah.
And I had a microfighter of the, Gunstar from Last
Mm,
Starfighter,
yeah.
and I was like, "This would be fun to put up there." I've already built it, so it's not a new build, but I'll submit it anyway. And
Mhm.
it was just I was like, "I don't have a really good photo of it," so I found out that you could do a render, right?
Mm.
So I was like, "Alright," so I rendered it, and I got, like, 4 or 5 different angles, and I submitted them, and they're like the first rejection was, "These photos aren't very good, blah, blah, blah," and I was like, "They're computer renders." That
Yeah, right.
and so I was like, "Okay, well, that's really weird." So I tried again. I tried to they're like, "It doesn't show the full model." I'm like, "It's a 80-piece model. Like, there's
Mhm.
not much to it."
Yeah.
So I was like, I tried some different angles and I tried some different lighting and like it kept getting rejected. I was like, "What is going on?" So finally I took some photos of it on a neutral background and it kept getting rejected. And I was like, "Okay, I'm not really sure what's going on with this." But for things like the photo's wrong. And I'm like, so I saw some people commenting on the LAN, on the ambassador network
Yeah.
where we discuss stuff. And I approached the guy who posted it on the land, so it was his ideas challenge thing
Mhm.
to run, right? So I kind of went, "Hey, I
Hey.
submitted one and it keeps getting rejected for like these really vague photo reasons." And he's like, "Yeah, don't worry about it. I'll accept it for you." And I'm like, "Okay, that's
Oh,
great. Thank you, but
but
what was I
also
doing wrong in the meantime?"
right.
You know, and it didn't
Mhm.
really He's like, "It's really weird because people are looking for it sort of programmatically and they're not really looking at the build itself, and so they're just kind of like ticking boxes, and it's not real intuitive what they're rejecting you with, and it's like it's
Annoying.
disheartening to hear, but I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I ran into too. It's kind of, frustrating.
It's and I yeah, I had the same type of thing. I also reached out to the person from the LAN, and then I reached out to someone that I just knew actually through the LAN as well, just to be like, "Hey, can you help me figure this out? I promise I'm not trying to, like, take advantage of this or, like,
Yeah.
break the rules or whatever. I'm just trying to help my
Well, and
build
James
make
brings up
sense."
a good point.
So,
It's like for those of us who didn't have
yeah,
somebody to talk to
exactly.
about it, it's like
Totally true.
that's why I wanted to know, what was I doing wrong? What could I pass on to other people? Or why
Exactly.
don't you
Yeah.
make your rejections a little more um, intuitive so we know
Mhm.
what we're doing wrong? So
Yeah. I
it
was
is a
told that
frustrating aspect.
it really is for sure. I was told that they were trying to improve the way that they approach rejecting things because it was the volume that they were getting in made it hard for them to review stuff, and so they were trying
Yeah.
to adjust. So I'm like, "Cool, here's some feedback about what I think would be helpful. Take it or leave it."
Yeah.
You didn't ask for it, I hope that's okay. And then the other thing I was gonna say was, advice I would give, and this also applies to those challenges, is give yourself time to submit it and have it rejected and have to go back because that is, from my experience, has been part of the process.
Hmm.
And so that way you can not be rushing at the last minute and then feel like, oh, I missed the opportunity because I didn't have
Yeah.
the time to fix it. So,
And I think
um,
Johnny ran into that. He was doing a Dino Riders
yeah,
submission for the 80s.
yeah.
It was a moving one too. Like he had it
Ah,
where he had
cool.
motorized it so it was walking and everything. And he was getting the photo rejection kind of same thing. And
Mm,
I think we just ran into a deadline basically.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, make sure to give yourself a padded amount of time if you're going to do that. Some of those challenges aren't very, the ideas is a little better because you don't have a deadline for it, but
yeah.
the challenges definitely are like, we're
They're
accepting these
fast.
within 3 weeks kind of thing. So
Yeah,
you don't have a ton of time, but
yeah.
um,
This just to show I finished it and it
while
had
we
all
were
the
talking,
pieces.
that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. The legs move really cool in a different
It's
way.
the
So I like
old
that.
slidey kind of
Hmm.
mechanic. Yeah.
The top spins. So, but yeah, it has all the pieces. So I'm super
That's
pleased.
very impressive.
I didn't expect that. So,
So we're getting to the top of the hour, but I got a couple
yeah,
of questions left,
sure.
mostly about conventions. You've been doing a few more conventions in the
Mm,
past year or so.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Virginia, I think you guys did brick slopes.
Hmm.
You went to Utah.
Yep.
Have you gone to Denver yet?
We did. So Brick Slopes, Colorado was the first one this year, and it was April, May,
Yeah.
April, yeah. So we just went to that a couple months ago. Actually, it was April because it was right before the show was announced. Um,
So is that
so
something you like see yourself doing ever? Because I know there's a handful of people that we've met that are like, this is one of the Tims, one of the previous Lego masters. That's all he does now is conventions. He takes his giant Old West
mm-hmm. Yeah,
display
yeah,
and just does convention circuits, and that's what he does with his life now.
yeah,
Is that something you see yourself doing, or are you trying to get back into like DEI consulting or doing that
yeah.
kind of stuff?
Good question. So I kind of see myself doing a combination of a few different things that all are Lego related in different ways. So on the consulting front, I got certified in something called Lego Serious Play, so I can use Lego with my consulting clients.
Yeah.
And I do plan on wanting to build that out even more after the show is through, because right now it's kind of there's a weird busy time frame of things happening. Um, but that is something that like I want to get back into that work a little bit more. The other two pieces though would be the content creation side of things, which is really fun. And so some of that does involve travel, and I think that's a helpful way to continue to grow in that arena. And then the other piece, which is newer to me, is doing commissions. And so not necessarily just a commission for a client where it's like they want their logo made or their building made or whatever. So yes, maybe that, but also doing commissions that actually have come through, sometimes through Lego or through other means. So an example is I got to do a really cool project that is now live on the Lego website, so I can finally talk about it. And I don't have it in this room. It's in the other room, I think. But, or no, I do. So I'll bring them over. So on the kids.lego.com page, they asked me to build 3 mashup builds with 3 different topics for the Dreams website. And so one was to do a mashup of gaming and animals. So I built this. It's a remote control. And the fun thing is they actually articulate.
fun.
So I used rubber bands underneath to make it so that it actually has the feel and vibe of a remote. The next one was to do experimentation and fantasy. So I came up with this, which it's 4 different pictures, but oh, it disappeared.
I'm trying to highlight you. Hang on.
Okay.
Yeah. There we go.
So there's a flower pot, there's a castle, there's a dragon, which is my favorite. And
that's a good
there's
dragon.
a pencil, and then you can flip them. So it's like one of those little toy things that you
you get the
switch
body
around.
and the head and the legs. They're all different.
And so those were 2, and then the third one was music and vehicles. And I built what is actually a pretty fragile model that is not as swooshable as I'd like it to be because it can fall apart. But I built this little guitar cruiser. So the flames pop off all the time.
Is that a videos handle?
It is, yeah. So so the whole point was this is a videos handle. I was really excited to find a way to do that. I wanted it to look like headphones. And then there's a little DJ booth back here, and Philip has a microphone. So this is him and this is me, which was fun to also get to put our sig figs on there.
How many sig figs do you own? How many did you buy?
I probably have 15 or 20 of me and probably 10 or 15 of Philip.
Okay, nice.
The face that I chose for my sig fig is from a CMF line, and I chose it back in like 2013 or whatever. And so it's hard to source and find now, but I'm attached to it. So I don't want to change it. But I do, because of that, like I don't really do sig fig trading with people for the most part. So at conventions, I'm always like, thanks for yours. I don't have one.
Yeah, that's kind of a convention staple too, is like, do you have a sig fig? Do you have a sig fig?
So
we've already mentioned kind of like why it's important to go to conventions as an AFOL. Is there an AFOL that you'd like to meet? Like if you were to go to a convention, would you, is there anybody specifically you kind of have your eye on to want to bend their ear about something?
That's a good question. I finally got to meet somebody that I was excited to meet. So the kind of related, but just happened. In Colorado, I got to meet Justin from Lego Masters Season 3, I think. And partly why was I wanted to talk with him about, and I got to, which was so fun, his model of the Stranger Things. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is so cool. So the scale of the figs, he basically found a way to build the half, you know how there's 3 sizes of legs for minifigs? So there's like the half size leg. I don't know what you'd call that, but like short, but not too short. He figured out the way to make the short legs so that he could actually make them in scale with the buildable sets that I don't know where my space.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Or the red one.
So you could make like buildable hobbits or something like that.
Yeah. And so it's the 4 kids from Stranger Things in the room playing D&D on their D&D board. The room is full of incredible details.
That's got to be huge on top of it.
Oh my gosh, it's enormous. And then he has a is it the Mind Flare? Is that what it's called? That's like have you seen? Yeah. Yeah. So that's like with all of its like spidery like legs going out over it. And we got to talk where he was just like one-on-one chatting, where he shared with us all about the structure that had to go into the legs to make sure that the body didn't fall and crash on the whole build.
Yeah.
And how, like, what his favorite parts were, which one of his favorite parts, which also I spotted and was like, that's wicked cool, was the blinds, like in the window. It's just
Oh
like,
man.
just everything he did, it was so impeccable. And
And every one of those is like a new problem you gotta solve. It's not just one
yeah,
build. It's
no,
every
yeah.
little bit's its own
hmm
project.
So that was really cool to finally get to see his stuff in person, and get to meet him in person. And then honestly, I was really excited to meet Kelly, and Emily, who were on the last season, and then to meet Michelle and Crystal, who
Mhm.
ended up partnering together for the Australia versus the World season.
Yeah.
And all of four of them, I think I got to meet all at once, and that was at Brick Slips, Utah last year. But part of that was I really value what they build and the ways that they approach building in different ways, and for different reasons. And so it was cool to get to like pick their brains about the different things that they do. So
Yeah, for sure.
I just realized all the people I said were people from Lego Masters. I think part of it too is like most of the people that I've gotten to meet that I was excited to meet, I'd already met mostly through rodeo, which has been fun. And then also
Yeah.
Brick for Virginia was really helpful too, to like check
I
off
feel
a
like
bunch of the
rodeo's
like
getting up a brick. I mean, it's been around for a while, but I feel like
mm,
now it's starting to attract a few more of like the circuit people who are like, got to
yeah.
go to Brick World Chicago, got to go to Virginia, got to go to
hmm
uh, Bricks by the Bay, got to go to rodeo. I'm like,
hmm
when
Yes.
I'm watching somebody I don't know on YouTube and they mention it, I'm like, oh yeah, you'll be there. That's
Yay.
great.
Yeah, yeah.
You talked about the cool legs on like the Demogorgon and the Mind Flayer.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there something that you're looking forward to or you want to try building that maybe out of your wheelhouse? I know we
Mm,
talked about doing the mechanics of stuff and how every time you do that, it's a bit of a learning thing.
yeah.
Um, do you use any software? Do you use Studio to do any of this work ahead of time, or is it something you just have to kind of play with a little bit to get it figured out?
I prefer physical building, but I also don't have none of us have unlimited bricks really. So
Yeah, you
for
do.
the
It's in brick. It's
right?
in Studio, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not even there. They're not all there.
Yeah. Oh, really? Interesting. So I put together one project in Studio that was the first time I really learned it and was able to finish a full model in there. And it was for something that's through the Lego Investor Network that I'm waiting on the pick a brick pieces to be able to do.
Mhm.
But I actually chose that. Designed this project this way because I wanted to force myself to learn Studio.
Yeah.
And it was a relatively simple concept. And so hopefully that'll come through and I'll be able to finally get to build it in person. But even in doing so, I still built like a section of it physically. It's sitting right over there.
Yeah, you have to
Y-
I'm the big
yeah,
stadium I'm working on, it's like I have to build it a little physically
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
there's no friction and gravity in the software, and you gotta make sure it
right,
doesn't fall apart on you.
for
That's
sure.
totally understandable.
I would love to do a large, like giant sculpture type challenge.
Mhm.
So something that's just massive scale. And I think for that, it's like, I don't know where I could begin doing that at home. And I
Oh,
think
that's
that
true.
just comes
Yeah.
from like the excitement of like having been able to do these really big things on TV with literally unlimited bricks and like all this stuff. But it also was limited to like the parts that are actually in the brick pit, which is another whole thing.
Yeah.
And so like I like crave that, like, how do I build something massive again?
Because then
But
you might
yeah,
have to learn how to weld or do carpentry to
right.
build a frame or something to hold it all
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, yeah. Just I'm fascinated by Brandon Griffith Art, I think.
Sounds
He's
familiar.
I believe that's his name. I think that's his name, but he's the one who does the all of the major huge builds that are on set during Lego Masters. It
Okay.
was him and Nathan Sawaya are the two that did, and just like having seen Nathan Sawaya's stuff in person, it's
Yeah.
incredible. But it does take other media. Like it has to
Yeah.
be a mixed media approach, just for this structure. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, when you're going to cons,
Yeah.
um do you feel, and then reaching back a little bit to your DEI experience, are there things that Lego conventions in general, you don't have to be specific like which cities shows
Sure.
or anything, but in general, do you feel like there are things they could improve upon in terms of inclusivity or
Hmm.
equity or anything like that when you visit these shows? Do you see any of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I appreciate that every convention I've been to, there's been a Gay Fools meetup. And I love that at Brick Rodeo, we also had a Women's Brick Initiative
Hmm.
event, and the Women's Brick Initiative also, I think, had something in Colorado. We didn't go this time to that one. But those having those spaces for people to connect and having them earlier in the convention is helpful because especially if you're new, it gives you a sense of comfort and connection right away, and it gives you some people that maybe you feel comfortable talking with or connecting with throughout the weekend.
Yeah.
One thing that I love that we did with Rodeo too a couple years back, and this was credit to Will, and it also bled into what we have with TextLug. He had asked me, since I was doing DEI work, to help out with crafting a message that was a kind of inclusive message and a little bit of a policy around what's expected behavior.
Hmm.
And I think that's important for every group to have. And I think people often think, well, we don't need that. There hasn't been anything bad in the past. That might be true, but
Yeah.
also once something bad happens once, if you don't have that in place, you have nothing to fall back on. And
Yep.
so if you proactively do it, even having it proactively there and speaking that to people either when they register and get their tickets or whatever, that makes a big difference because people know in advance that there might be consequences to negative actions. So
Yeah.
I think those are things that I would recommend every group do. I honestly, to be honest, I think that's something that the land could facilitate. Like,
Oh yeah,
I
for
feel
sure.
like I appreciate that they want each convention to feel unique and they don't want to be too heavy handed with stuff. But I think a very simple thing they could do is bare minimum, you have to have this type of a or like here's recommended guidance on what you could include
I
as
had
a starting
drifted
point
off
for
because
stuff.
I was trying to go find a Brick Rodeo badge because it
Oh
had
yeah.
it printed on the back. It was we had
Oh
these band
yeah, that's right.
placards, and
I
it
forgot
had
about
it
that.
written on the back.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great inclusion, not just on the website or the email that
Yeah.
you get, but somewhere else physically on site
Like
where people
regularly.
can,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like on the badges and stuff. So I totally agree. I think when
Totally.
you guys were working on that, I felt like that was a super positive step.
Yeah.
Um, that's all the questions I've got.
Yeah.
I appreciate you being on.
Yeah,
Is
thank
there
you for having me.
anything that you're looking forward to, maybe even not Lego related, that's something coming?
Mm. Let's see.
Excuse me. Held out
Yeah.
to the last minute. Um, that may be coming up. I know Lego Masters was kind of a huge thing, and that's still unfolding as we speak. But
Yeah, yeah.
once that's done, um,
Mhm.
and I hope you make it all the way through. I hope you're a grand champion or wherever. That
Thank
this
you.
is my first time watching Lego Masters, so I have no idea. But,
Yeah.
like, outside of that, is there anything you're looking forward to? Something people can look forward to from you,
Yeah.
that's coming up?
So this is Lego related, but one thing I'm very excited about is through the Ambassador Network, one of the products I asked to review was this, and I just started to film my first one today, but it is the Spike Prime Education Set. The reason is on Lego Masters, we used elements from that for the movement. And
Yep.
so through the show, I learned a little bit more about movement that way
Yeah,
and wanted
Johnny
to
was talking
continue.
to the Pittsburgh Pals about that, and there was which ones did you use? Did you use Power Up? Did you use, so
Mhm.
Spike Prime was the one they were talking about.
Yeah, so I'm excited because I plan to do a series of tutorial videos on how to do some simple movement things. The first one I had planned to share today, and I'm way behind. But I'm going to show how we built the movement for our Wicked build this week.
Cool.
And spoiler alert, there might be other motion things next week, given that it's a motion challenge that they've already
Yeah.
announced. And so I plan to also share a little bit more that week too. But my hope is to continue to build out evergreen educational content on YouTube. That would be, and what I mean by evergreen is that like anytime someone wants to learn how to build a Lowell sphere, they can Google it and maybe find my YouTube channel and find a way. Yay! I
Learn
want
from
to
watching your
continue.
channel.
Oh, awesome. That's really awesome to hear. But yes, that's my hope, is to continue to develop and grow out the educational side of things on the content. The other thing is I am doing the weekly build challenge that is in the Lego calendar. And yes, everybody like the feed for sure. And thank you, Ben, for this opportunity. It's been really fun. But yes, doing the daily or the weekly builds calendar. A, I'm glad it's not daily, because that was a lot in 2023. But B, I'm doing it in a community of builders on Instagram. And so if you are on Instagram and you want to participate, currently that's the only place I have to manage it right now. I'd love to expand other platforms, but that's the easiest way, at least for starting for me.
Yeah.
But I want to do some build challenge, or I mean, I want to do some prizes for people who are participating, hopefully in the next few months. And
Oh, very
so
cool.
even like prizes aside, I would love for anybody to join us. It's a really supportive group of about 15 to 20 people that have been pretty regularly building since the beginning of the year, which is fun. So
Yeah, and build challenges, if you're not part of a lug,
mhm.
and we do monthly build challenges in our group, but
Yes.
if you don't have a lug to go to, having an online community where you're, and I've seen people doing like the little Lego Pictionary cards that they get, and they're just
Yeah.
every day they're building these little, a pair of glasses, a tractor, it's just like
Hmm.
random stuff. Anything that can challenge you to think a little differently about how to put small things together, big things together. It all helps you kind of become a more well-rounded builder.
For sure. Totally agree. Yeah. So yeah, would love to have anybody who wants to participate in that. Um, yeah, I think those are the main things. It's been so much fun to be able to have the show finally out and be able to talk a little bit more about it.
I
And
bet.
if people have questions that they want to ask too, you feel free to DM me as well. And if I can answer, I will.
Outstanding.
Yeah. So anyway, it's been really, really good to chat today. So thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. I know you're,
Yeah.
I I was gonna say you're super busy, but I realize I just got you coming home from dinner, so you're not that busy. Don't lie.
No, yeah, you're good.
Yeah, we'll talk. We'll definitely talk offline. I know we need to hang
Sounds
out.
good. Yeah.
But yeah, make sure you guys visit Brady-Joyner bricks. He's on
Yay.
Instagram. He does have a YouTube channel and a TikTok channel. I think all under just
Mhm.
Brady-Joyner bricks.
Yep.
So go find him in all the socials. And yeah, I appreciate you guys hanging out with us and asking questions.
Yep.
And talk to you later, Justin. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. See you soon. Bye,
Bye.
friends.